Walking Dead, a podcast pulverizing episodes beyond the Walking Dead universe. Because I'm from Texas, even though I'm Irish. That's Irish? Why is that Irish?
That was not Irish.
That's
Also,
not Irish.
He doesn't say,
At all.
he says the Lonestar State, Dave.
Lonestar State? Ooh la la.
He didn't even say ooh la la. It
He
was
said, "Oh la
wrong.
la."
He's like,
Oh la la.
la.
Oh la la.
I was like, that's
Oh my
wrong
gosh.
on so many levels.
Sometimes we give you news. Sometimes we pop your stitches, but most times we go deep into your wounds and make you laugh and then pop your stitches. And it's a cycle that keeps repeating. I'm your host, David Cameo, and I'm joined by Cosmom0 and I, Rachel Bird, Sharon D, aka Blazy Gardner, and Bridget, ko-fi.com/punkybrewster. That's PUNKYBRUYSETR, and Survivors Tier member Takira. You can reach at ko-fi.com/Connie Dixon, the number 4 LYFE. That's Connie Dixon for life. And we're here to talk about the second episode of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, titled Alouette. No, it's just
That's perfect.
Alouette.
Spot on.
yeah, I know. I'm like fluent in French, en français.
I'm affluent.
Alouette est gentille, alouette, l'alouette je te plumerai. Anyway, there you go. Fine. Just to prove
All right,
it,
I didn't hate it.
in case you have seen the intro music and sequence to our own episode, the music that I remixed for that was from 2 songs, but mostly this one song from the Canadian band The Tea Party. And the song is called The Messenger. And with the intro bit, including a little bit from the song from the same album called Heaven Coming Down. So I thought that was kind of an interesting choice because I was like, okay, The Messenger, let me use that song. It's a great song. I used to play it on stage all the time. Daryl's The Messenger. And I thought, it's a pretty good song to begin with in case people want to know where that came from and might want to listen to the song themselves or the songs themselves. The album is called Triptych. And again, the band is called The Tea Party. We have merch in development. We're going to probably put the logo design at some point between the time we record this episode and the time it actually goes out. So it's going to contain the Squawking Dixon logo. The art I'm kind of working on. I kind of want to have, I'm going to say this out loud, and as we go, you guys are going to help me along the way probably. It's going to be a silhouette of me, like Daryl Dixon has a pike sort of thing in the key art. It's going to say Hope is Lost. And it's just going to be me with like a mic stand with a mic at the end, looking out into the distance.
Like a boom mic?
No, like you see the mic that I have here?
Like
It's just going to be
okay.
straight
on the
up.
end of a stick.
Yeah, at the end of
Okay.
the stick, there'll be the mic. And then Hope is Lost as me looking out in the distance. It's still a silhouette though. And it'll be Squawking Dixon.
I love it.
And the rest of you are going to be
Mhm.
looking from behind me, like with a question mark over your head.
And we're like,
Hope is lost.
I want this look on my face.
Actually, it'll be in French. I don't know.
so-
I don't know what it is. Espoir perdu.
I don't know. I
Espoir
don't know how
perdu.
to make a French face.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like this.
Sharon D will be in. For example, Sharon D will be in a beret. I don't know why. Probably.
Oh, there we go.
You'll be
Okay.
holding a baguette. That's how.
No, you'll be holding a baguette, and Rachel will be like Ferris Pramps above, and then with a question mark.
Bridget
Yeah.
will have a baguette in her backpack instead of this declaration of
Yes.
That'll work. That'll work. All right.
Perfect.
It'll be out when the series is over. The season 1 is done. It's a lot of work. Anyway, any other news that we should be talking about before we continue?
Yes, Bridget's news.
I have something to share. So you remember how we talked about the drawing from the last episode?
Yes.
Talked about, we were basically bullying a child. A character, granted.
Trigger warning, I'm about to bully a child again. Okay, so today I'm in church. God sends me a vision because suddenly I remember that Travis, my husband, at one point did draw Jesus being baptized in the river with John the Baptist when he was a child. And so I just want to show you that to tell you that anyone could have
yes.
drawn this.
Yes.
And you could just say that it's Daryl, but it's not.
I'm so excited.
Oh boy.
It's Daryl.
It's
Oh my
definitely-
gosh.
it's
That's
definitely-
Daryl Dixon.
First of all, he's very ripped. Okay, this is John the Baptist. This is John the Baptist baptizing. So just
There's
so
John the
people know,
Baptist, there's
John the
Jesus.
Baptist is baptizing a very shiny Jesus, a very shiny and ripped wrestler Jesus.
Well, he was a
in the
really
river.
big comic
Yes.
book fan, so this is like,
Yeah, you got to draw the little squigglies and the.
yeah.
To
It's actually
I
pretty
just
good.
wanted you.
Oh, gosh.
It's a good
Dude,
drawing. I just wanted you to know.
Travis totally demolishes Laurent. Okay, he
Hey,
demolishes
Laurent.
Laurent.
Laurent is. He should stick to math. Is
A
all I'm saying.
12-year-old child has
All I'm
nothing
saying.
on a 30-something-year-old
He
man.
didn't draw this when he was 30.
It wasn't when he
He
was
drew this
30.
as a child.
Oh,
She
well,
said that when he was a child.
then even more props. Even more props.
Yeah. That is amazing.
In Laurent's defense,
Yeah, please.
there aren't as many drawing materials available for him to use.
Listen to this
True.
Laurent apologist over here.
Right.
Laurent apologist.
I just.
He probably had to
I'm
use
not
like
kidding.
charred
I'm not
pieces
kidding.
of wood.
I was sitting in church and I thought of this drawing because I was like, that's in my house somewhere. I have to get this for the podcast.
That is amazing. That is so
I
amazing.
have to be able to show this because it just goes to prove Laurent is just, he needs to stick to math, is all I'm saying.
Laurent's drawing on 12-year-old ruined, ancient, falling apart paper, and Travis had nice, fresh paper to draw on. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just trying
it's
to
like no
help you out.
competition. Right.
Okay. Okay. It still doesn't mean either of them is psychic. That's all I'm saying.
Your
Okay.
husband's psychic? Maybe? No. Maybe.
How did he know that Daryl Dixon would have his own show?
Travis foretold the coming of the Daryl Dixon show.
Right? He knew then.
At 12 or whenever that
I
was.
don't know when he drew this. He probably wasn't even 12 yet.
That's Laurent baptizing Daryl.
Yep.
That's Laurent making Daryl take a bath.
It's the future. Oh my god.
Now we're beating on Travis. Baby Travis.
I know. And he's such a good sport. He went and got it for me when I was like, wait, do you have this?
I need to use this as a prop to beat on a child's drawing.
I need to
How do you
make
feel
fun
about
of a
some
child. Please get this for me.
Shit you gotta do now in church next week. Okay, so listen, I have a confession to make. That's Catholics.
It was some production assistant that actually drew that.
That is worse. Yeah, I would agree.
I think I need another Vicodin.
But wait, what if you found out that it was Luis Sigliuski? I can't say his last name. I was in my head Sigliuzzi.
He could
That's-
have drawn it, and then I feel really bad because, you know, they let Kaylee Fleming do the painting of Daryl's vest. So he could have actually been the one to draw it. And if that's the case, I'm so sorry. I'm
Now
so
she's
sorry,
sorry.
kiddo.
Now she's
I'm
sorry.
so sorry. But
Fake
like
kids we can
Daryl
beat
did make
up
fun
on.
of you first.
Yeah. We used to pick
So
on
he's
kids
the
like
jerk,
that.
not
in
us.
He's a
grade
jerk.
school.
I'm just playing off of it. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's great.
We're just dogpiling.
So anyway, we're here to talk about the second episode where we get to really move on from this point of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, called Alouette. Yes, we said that already, but then stuff got in the way. Let's move on to first impressions. And of course, we have to start with survivors to remember. Takira.
So first, I'm just going to say that I'm telling my doctor on all of you. All of you.
Yeah, oh, we should mention, because they don't know, Takira had some surgery and has some stitches, and she really should not be laughing right now. But I told
It's
her
just not stopping
specifically,
her. She's
we cannot
laughing.
promise her anything.
This episode, while not much moved forward storyline-wise, had so much going on. A walker had a baby. There's just no words after
What in
that.
the 2004 Dawn of the Dead is this?
For real.
But also Isabel and Laurent and Sylvie's backstory just really hit me in the feels.
A walker had a baby. Walker baby. This is the Last of Us vibes that people are talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, big time.
Yeah,
Big
this
time.
is the specific detail, which it's like
Yeah.
you could tell that's how it happened, even in the first episode.
The guy shooting out of the tower was also very Last of Us, because that is exactly what happened in The Last of Us.
In the fourth episode.
I think so, third or fourth. I think it was the
Fourth.
fourth one when they
Or
were in Kansas
With
City.
Sam. Yeah.
Might have
Yeah.
been the fifth, actually. Yeah,
But anyway,
because that's
yeah,
the
it was
second part.
exactly the same thing that happened. There was a guy shooting from a tower at them, and Joel/Daryl snuck into the tower and took out the guy that was shooting at him.
Although the RJ Gaines in this episode, which sounds a lot like RJ Grimes, but
Grimes,
I
I know,
digress,
right?
was not very
Immediately.
silent like in the television show. He was very, very loquacious, as they say.
I really enjoyed
Mhm.
this one. I watched it twice in really quick succession so I could get some notes and stuff. But I love the cinematography. Some of the shots were unbelievable. I know, Bridget, you said last week about people comparing it to Last of Us, but it's really hard not to. I got some like Lost Boys vibes with the little kids, like from Hook, which is funny since Robin Williams was in this episode technically.
I thought
Yeah.
you meant the
So,
vampire movie.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good tie. I didn't even know that. Okay.
I was waiting for the
Yeah.
kids to start shouting, Rufio!
Rufio, right? Oh, I mean,
Right. They howled in the movie, right? Yeah.
I'm even liking Daryl, believe it or not. So he's funny. Like drinking the soup, just picking up the soup bowl and drinking it. That was so funny.
And it's not even enough that he did that. It's like, oh, it's good soup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought he said something else at first. I thought he said,
Good
that's some
shit?
good shit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Me too.
Père Daryl.
I really enjoyed seeing the beginning of the apocalypse part. Like that was a lot of fun. Seeing it from Isabel's perspective was really interesting.
Even though we know Daryl, this is a new series, and I expected at least the first couple to few episodes to really focus on the other characters. Character development is important, especially if they want us to feel something for these people. So I guess I was prepared for not a whole lot of forward movement in the first couple of episodes, and I'm really okay with it. Honestly, I know usually I'm like, ugh, it's not going anywhere. This is boring. But
True.
I understand.
True facts.
I know. But I do understand how important it is for us to develop feelings for these other characters. And I think they're doing a really good job of that. We're taking baby steps forward while filling in all these gaps about who are these people and why should we care about them.
It's super interesting to see how things happened elsewhere. Things happened in other parts of the US, but it's very interesting to see how it developed in France, in Paris. Maybe that's why, while it's not moving forward super fast, is interesting enough to us to keep us interested in it.
I was wondering while we were watching the fall of France, where did that fall in relation to what was happening in the United States? Is this a few months later? Is this before the US? Is this happening at the same time? I just wonder, because you would think if it were a significant of time afterwards, France would have been reporting on it, right? While they still had the power of media. People are eating each other in America. They're so crazy. What did they run out of potatoes or something?
Potato.
Obviously,
or corn.
obviously Isabel didn't know what was going on. I'm Irish. I go to potatoes. Obviously, Isabel didn't know what was going on because the shock on her face and everything. And everyone in zombie movies and zombie shows have never seen a zombie movie or TV show. And they're like, what is this craziness?
Except for the one person maybe that everybody seems to love, whom I just can't. And it's because people love him that I can't stand him, is Tobias. Perhaps.
Yes.
Perhaps.
I love Tobias.
It seems like he knew something. And
He
that
did.
something
Tobias
is
is the
definitely
smartest.
zombie movies.
Speaking of Fear, I like that Fear and this one kind of both started with, this is the second episode, but what I mean is showing us the beginning. Fear, we had Nick waking up in the drug house. And in this one, we have Isabel, who is partying at a rave. We have both people kind of in drug-fueled states trying to figure out what in the world is going on, which makes it even a little bit crazier, especially seeing it through her perspective. I like the way they kind of swung the shots around, like you were just as disoriented as she was, even though as the audience, we of course know what's going on. And I noticed that when they did the party scenes, they'd cut the volume in and out. Remember in The World Beyond when they were showing the dream sequence with Huck at the start? She's with her army guy boyfriend, and there's a bar. It's a bar. They're all drinking and stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like the audio goes in and out, and all the lights are flashing and stuff. It kind of gave me that vibe. They're trying to put you into that disoriented, out of it state, so you feel just as lost as they do.
Right. Well, and the best part about that sequence, just to give it a little bit more breadth, is what you were saying about seeing it from her point of view. You could tell by the audio in your ears as you listen that there's stuff going on behind her. You can hear cars crashing and wheels screeching and zombies making noise. The first indication of there being anything is just as she's stepping out of the club. You're already starting to hear a commotion in the club. And maybe some growling, but I think mostly it's the commotion, and then things getting knocked over. And You don't hear the music anymore. That's what they say. And
French commotion.
yeah, French commotion. That's our new band name.
Good thing she left when she did.
You'll notice that she had been pickpocketing all the men that she's been meeting all night with the watches.
Oh,
and the
that was
cash
very
Very sorry, I didn't
heavily
catch it the first time.
insinuated. Oh, I did immediately.
I did not
Immediately,
catch
I knew
it.
what she was doing.
One of the things that came to me while I was watching it the second time is, much like John Dory, the apocalypse saved her because she obviously was not in a good place. You could see the scars where she'd cut herself. Yes, she was partying, but it was not a happy, I'm enjoying this party.
What
You
I'm
could
having to
tell
do.
that she was very unhappy with what she was doing and in a bad place. And with the onset of the apocalypse, now she's got a purpose and something to live for. Whereas in the real world, she didn't. She was just existing and doing what she had to, which she's still doing what she has to, but it's in, at least in her heart and mind, to a service of a greater, I don't want to say a greater power, because obviously
Purpose.
she's not really a nun, but for a greater purpose, which is maybe to make up for what she did in the previous life, which was stealing and fucking people over. And now she has a chance to make that up. The apocalypse gave her what she could never have had in the real world.
A second chance. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to say this now before we move on to Bridget. You just gave me a piece that I was like thinking, why? We might find out what led her to cutting herself, aka or trying to slit her wrist. Fine. But in the first episode, she mentions that her parents were in Médecins Sans Frontières, which is Doctors Without Borders. And they had to move around a lot, and then they settled in France. But they stayed in France, is going to be my assumption. And she's obviously taking care of Lily. I think that at some point her parents might have passed, and she was left holding the bag with Lily and raising her as her own, in a sense. I mean, it's her sister, but raising a child. And isn't it ironic that now she has to start from scratch and raise this other child? There's a feeling there. Well, first of all, in the beginning, she says the plans have changed. They weren't going to go take that route that Père Jean laid out and said the plan has changed. And I was wondering about that. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And her plans must have changed as well. With her parents, I'm going to go on the assumption until it's been revealed later on that her parents died and that she had to take care of Lily. But then now again, she has to take care of this other child, her child, and raise him up. And Daryl, his purpose was to get home. But of course, along the way, he's meeting all these people and he can't pretend like they don't exist or shove them aside to get what he wants in order to move on. His plans have changed too. And she says to Lauren, you're special. Adults lie to you and they get away with it. But Isabel also never wanted to be special. I don't think she ever wanted to have to be Lily's parent. And now she definitely didn't want to have to be Laurent's parent as well. I don't think she ever, just like Daryl in a sense, never got a chance to be a kid. And so she couldn't help but act out later on in life, going to parties and stealing to maybe have to make ends meet, let's say, and then having to raise Lily. And then now again, she's having to sacrifice herself for this other child. So it's a very interesting thing I'm just noticing right now because you said it.
As far as her having to make ends meet, that was a really fucking nice apartment for someone who's just trying to make ends meet.
I imagine that she felt like she had to keep it up too. And not in the middle of Paris, but it seemed a little bit outside of Paris or like outside the city center. Bridget, what did you think of this episode? See, I knew we'd get to it.
One eternity later.
That'll be in the video.
I thought it was a great follow-up episode to the first one. I think sometimes we can kind of slow down on the second one and not keep up the story as much. So yes, we didn't get a ton of forward movement, but a lot was unveiled in this episode. And so I think that makes you feel like the story's moving forward, even though they haven't really moved forward that much.
That's basically the show. Not a lot of things happen to our actual characters in physical movement, but a lot happens behind the scenes. A lot of factoids that we should probably not bring up if we want Rachel to make it to work on time. And but I'm really kind of going to go off what I said at the end of the last episode, which was this episode was the reason why I came to the conclusion that the series does give a little bit more breathing room for characters to grow and tell a story in inarguably a short amount of time, probably. And we're the second episode of 6 episodes. And even though our characters aren't moving as quickly as they did in Dead City, I still feel like they're telling a story and they're not dawdling, but at the same time, things are happening. Emotions are developing. People's personalities are being revealed. You know, we don't have to reveal everything at once. And Dead City did a good job of that too, even through all the chaos. But I feel like I'm a little bit more calm and less panicked and less anxious about what other devastating thing is going to be revealed in the next episode. So I like that very much about the series. So the interesting thing about the pre-fall is that it does tie into the greater episode, as those sequences tend to do, hopefully, is that they give greater context to what's happening in the present, which is why I thought of what I thought of with regards to Lily and her parents and having to take care of yet another child, having to keep that promise. One of the more interesting takeaways, because it didn't have to be in the scene, but of course it has to be in the scene because it has to tie to the present, is bumping into Amy in the street, the kid, and Isabel telling her to stay in her apartment to wait for her parents to come back. The end result is all these children, all these tribes' children, that's their story too. They were told to stay in the school until their parents came to pick them up, but they never came to pick them up. And other kids were dropped off in baskets in front of their place over time. Other kids were lost in the woods. And I mentioned this in our Discord while we were watching it. I said that on second watch, when you're taking notes, the scene moves fairly quickly. But when you're taking your time and reading this, I was like getting emotional just thinking about how many of these experiences might have happened in a fictional world. Let's just say that, so I don't get too emotional, but tying it back to Amy, I thought that was just a very interesting thing to put in there to anchor it to the present.
I was very upset about being shown Amy. Are you
It's a
trying
tiny
to
thing.
just torture us with this little girl that we have absolutely no idea what happened to her?
That might be one of the reasons that Isabel doesn't want to go back through Paris, because she doesn't want to go back and see what she left behind and the people that she left behind.
That's what I was thinking too. I mean, even if it was just this little kid, I was also thinking, and I don't know if you guys thought the same, throughout the episode, her name is only mentioned, I think, once, at least as far as I could tell. But the leader of those kids, I end up learning her name is Lou. Like, oh, I'm going to take you back to Lou, he says to the American, RJ Gaines, to decide what to do with you, your shit ass. And I was like, oh, but you know what? Like in my head, I said, like, what if this girl Lou was Amy? Like in my head, I'm like, maybe. I don't know. But do you guys think somewhat the same?
No. Why? What reason would she have to change her name?
And they're really far away from where they started.
Yeah.
For sure.
When she said some of the older kids were dropped off and they stayed, she was one of the older kids that was there. And so she's like 18 now, maybe. She was 6 when she was dropped off, so she's 17 or 18. How would Amy have gotten all the way to the school? And it just doesn't make sense.
It's a preschool. So preschool age children, at least in the United States, I don't know how it is in other countries, obviously, but 3 years old is like the earliest that you can attend what's defined as preschool. And it goes until kindergarten. So it's anywhere from 5, really 6 is pushing it. 4 to 5 is really like pre-K.
Right. So this kid's 17 or 18.
Yeah, they're like 18, max 19, these kids who were like originally there. And Amy seemed a little bit older than that, actually. She seemed closer to like 7 or 8, I figured.
Well, that's why my brain went there.
I'm just saying it's improbable because she's 200 miles away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just on top of that, there's also an age discrepancy.
And I don't think she would have any cause to change her name at all. Why would she go by a different name?
It was a dumb thought as I was listening, and because you don't really get to learn her name until the end. So you're watching and you don't. I didn't hear her name.
They say it early
I mean, I think
on.
maybe she's a good representation of what Amy could have been. Maybe she reminds Isabel of her, but to be the same person, I don't.
I never really thought that, but I'm like, but what if? Yeah, maybe. Well, anyway.
She represents the hope that Isabel has for the children. She left Amy, so she may feel some sort of remorse or responsibility for that. These children represent the hope of like, maybe she's okay. Maybe she was able to like eke out a living somehow.
Stories we tell ourselves.
Amy is one of the 2 characters that I have written down that in the back of my mind I'm wondering, will Isabel see again?
Right.
Okay.
And will she recognize her? Because she'll look different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Very.
But Isabel won't. Isabel looks the same.
Right.
For the most part.
Right.
You know, there is a walker in one. I remember pausing at one point, either at the end of the last episode or maybe even the trailer. It might have been the trailer. Amy had a particular hairstyle, like this kind of like almost Princess Leia like plait that kind of went across the back of her head. And one of the walkers had that hairstyle. And I'm like, no, I don't like this. But she was older. I don't know. But the walker looked older. I don't know. I was like, but maybe also that maybe could have happened. Anyway.
The subway scene, the way they shot that. Number one, it reminded me of Acheron part 2 when Daryl was going through the subway cars. But the way they shot it as it was going by, and you could just see the action going on, again, it just led to that disorienting feeling, but at the same time, like, we know what's going on, you know? But I loved how they shot that. That was probably my favorite scene, just that little bit, just because of the way they shot it. And the first time I watched it, it was shocking. Like, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. The train scene was so quick, but it's my favorite.
I mean, it was the scene that made me go, holy shit, like, out of everything that happened.
Y'all need to watch Train to Busan, apparently.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Oh, that's a
The
good one.
cinematography, as always,
Same vibe.
is just fucking stellar on this show.
There's two things I want to say. That one, you mentioned Train to Busan, which is going to be on Shudder, I think it is. I saw a commercial for it.
Oh, okay. If you have AMC Plus through Amazon, Shudder is included in your package. So
Yep. AMC Plus has Shudder and
BBC America.
BBC
Yeah.
American, and I think IFC, right?
That one too.
So second thing is, this is maybe the answer that people wanted to why they didn't like Fear the Walking Dead. They felt like they were owed a little bit more of what happened during the fall, and they didn't get what they wanted. And this may have been one of those things that kind of gave a little bit more to people who were hungry for more about what could have happened. I mean, you tell me though, because
to
some
be
people
fair, they got
more
a whole
complaints than they
season
others.
of the fall. I get what everybody's saying. You're not getting as much of the action that you wanted, but that's because it was also a television show. You're not just watching 30-minute increments of the fall of man during the zombie apocalypse. Like, that doesn't make any sense. If you want that, create that, I guess, yourself, because that doesn't exist anywhere else where you're just going to get that. You're not going to feel any connection. The reason that zombie media connects so well with its audience is because you feel a connection to the characters, or in the sense of disparity and finding yourself after a horrible tragedy, or getting to do what you really want to do, or getting to be the person that you're meant to be. That all happens because you connect with characters, or you connect with this idea. It's not about what happens at the beginning. Yes, that part is super cool. This was my favorite part of this episode, was this beginning, because it was like horror and it was awesome.
So put that aside. This was my favorite part.
This is my favorite part. But you can't just have that. I get what people were saying, but you got a whole season of it.
Rachel, weren't you one of the bigger proponents of wanting to see more from the fall? I think it was.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I like seeing the beginning stages, but I also agree with Bridget. It can't just be that. We need to move from that. I like how they just sort of squeezed this into the episode. It wasn't the whole episode, but I do really enjoy seeing people's different reactions to what's happening and how they respond to it, how their brain like comprehends what's going on, and like,
or attempts to.
Like in the midst of all this chaos, how do they get to a place where they're safe so that we know they have survived to this future point that we're seeing them at now?
You know, springboarding off of that point, seeing the reactions for the first time, one thing that you get to see is Lily has thus far, until they saw the paramedics, had been shielded from all this chaos. And it wasn't until that moment where she's like, what was that? Oh, one of them bit me, that you realize, she doesn't know.
They don't know at that point what the bites do either. And I had to tell myself that out loud. I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, killer, right? But they don't know that. They don't know what these bites do yet.
Well, Isabel might, because when she's in the square, or at least the roundabout, where she first observes the newspaper stall guy gets hit by a car. She realized, one, she finds out that the dead will come back. She looks behind her. This happens all at once. And again, from her perspective, to Sharon D's point, this is all happening from her perspective. While you're hearing all the chaos in your ears behind her, she turns finally to see somebody being bit in the neck. And of course, I don't think she sees that person turning, but I think she can make a good educated guess that that's what happens. I'm okay with her figuring that out.
It might just be a theory, but at this point, it's like, you've never seen dead people come back to life either, so anything's possible,
well,
right?
That's not my bigger point. My bigger point, though, is it ties well with the present scenes, because Laurent is finding out lately that some of the stuff that she's been telling him about her father, let's say, is the plot for the Count of Monte Cristo, right? So she's finding out that the lack of knowledge, lack of the truth, may end up harming him, just like it harmed Lily, not knowing,
which is always the truth.
So there's a little bit of a tie.
After Lily dies, they don't know how to put her down, correct?
Oh, yeah.
They don't, because this is still in the beginning. What if she is the precursor to Père Jean? What if something happened with Lily and it made them think that they could bring Père Jean back, and that's why they didn't put him down, and that's why they were believing that he could keep going. Maybe it's something to do with Laurent. I don't want to say they were able to bring her back or anything like that, but maybe they were able to like stabilize her as a walker or something, you know, and that's using Laurent, and that's why they figured they could do it with Père Jean too.
So you're saying they might have kept Walker Lily around a little while, or Père Jean,
Right.
or
because they don't know yet the headshot is what you have to do, right? They don't know that you have to stab them in the head or whatever, because I think they've been pretty secluded too. Like the nuns, I don't think they've had to deal with any of the dead yet, right? Because they're still in the abbey.
Right.
Like people just haven't shown up to get their kids and stuff. Like I don't think they've had to deal with it yet. So they would have no idea. So as religious people, maybe they figured that if they kept her, she would get better, like Herschel thought. Having Laurent, maybe Laurent cut his hand and put her, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That would be so far-fetched, but maybe they thought that they could stabilize her or bring her back. Maybe something happened to make them think that. And so they thought they could do the same with Père Jean.
For like a second after Laurent is born, before we see Isabelle carrying him away, we do see Père Jean praying. He like holds, the cross up to Lily and he's like praying for her. And like,
I really should have paid attention more, but it sounded like an exorcism, or looked like an exorcism.
I'm glad you said it.
That would be your only correlation.
But yeah,
because
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
If zombies don't exist, like zombie media doesn't exist in this, your only context is like, is this a demon? Because what else would it be?
That's
to
what
you?
I was thinking. Yep.
And then, of course, Père Jean does not pass in these moments because Laurent does learn things from him later on in life. So he sticks around. So my mind for a second thought, oh, what if this is where he gets it, right? But no, he was around for a little while.
They could have kept Lily around too, praying for her, trying to do exorcism. Maybe they tried to, like Charity said, they tried to bring her back. We know that that's not going to work because it's not a demon possessing her body. It's the virus. But maybe they did keep her around for a while, and Père Jean was doing routine exorcisms with her. And then one time, he got too close and she got him.
That makes it sadder a little bit.
Right?
It took until Sharon started talking for my brain to even, y'all don't even know. I can't even yell actually because it hurts. But I was like yelling at the screen because like I'm like, kill her, kill her, kill her. But it's not registering that they don't know.
They don't know.
They don't understand. Right. And then I'm like, oh my God, how long did they leave her like that?
So I like that, Sharon. So it's pretty good find, which is why they leave Père Jean. And they believe that, going off of our last episode, they believe probably that this is more of a spiritual illness of some kind that has to be purged, and that he somehow let it in, and that's how that happened. Right. No, I think they do believe in the physical stuff too. That you get bit, you turn. I think they believe in They believe in both things because they obviously have to grow plants, make medicine, all that stuff. They know science exists. We're not going to pretend like they don't. But I think they believe that the virus, let's say, we'll call it that, is of a more spiritual nature, let's say.
Can I get nitpicky for just a minute here, and then we can move on from my nitpickiness?
Always, I think. Yeah.
Timeline. We know Lily is roughly 7 months pregnant. She gets bit, which we know at the most she has a few days to survive. So Laurent is born before he's full term.
Yep. Why do you look like a 6-month-old? I don't know.
That was the miracle, Rachel. That was the miracle. Is that this baby looks fully healthy.
That baby was not full term. The baby that we saw was clearly full term. A baby in real life who's born prematurely would need so much
care,
prenatal care, so much care in those next few months. Do we want to chalk it up to a miracle? Sure. I'm okay with that. I can swallow that.
The whole theme of the episode is lies, so maybe Lily lied to her about the dates too. She was very secretive about the father. I was thinking maybe she didn't want to say a time period because it was someone that, if she said,
I felt like it was
8 months,
Isabel's boyfriend.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, too. I definitely got that impression too.
Hence the bigger reason why she wanted to leave him behind. Yeah. Or he did.
I would agree with that, except that her physical appearance would also suggest approximately 7 months.
I can see that too, but if she's been trying to hide it this whole time,
very well, I might add,
she obviously hasn't been going to get prenatal care because she's sick before she gets bitten. So that could be part of the reason why she's having a hard time, is because she's like tried to keep it hidden and like not eating as much as she should or whatever, so that she didn't get that big.
One, being in a neighborhood where teen pregnancy is rampant. I have seen pregnancies be hidden for the full 9 months and no one know that that person was pregnant just because they want it hidden and they hide it. Number two, she told her that she was lying to her for 7 months. In my mind, I automatically said women don't find out on day one that they're pregnant.
True.
Mm.
Very true.
So there's a little bit of leeway
good-
there with the 7 months.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Okay.
was like, I'm thinking
Yeah.
maybe 7.5, 8 months.
I would agree. She could have been closer to 8 months. Some of you know, some might not know. I didn't know that I was pregnant with Silas until I was 7.5 months.
Silas is a miracle
pregnant.
child. Anyway, sorry.
I was 7.5 months pregnant before I knew.
Oh, you didn't even
there
know
was a
until
baby in there.
7.5 months?
Yep.
Whoa.
Wow.
I did not know.
What a warrior. She's like, I'm sick all
that's
the
a
time. What's
whole-
happening?
Yeah. Well, no, I wasn't. That's the thing.
Oh, okay.
I did not have typical symptoms
Yeah.
at all. Not at all. You can even hide it from yourself. My cousin is another good example. She also had a hidden pregnancy for many, many months, and she delivered without any of us knowing. I'm not putting my
gonna
cousin
name
down
names.
here at all, but she's not a small girl. She's got she's of a healthy size. So I feel like it was a little bit easier maybe for her to
Hide it? Okay.
Gotcha. but she would wear very overly baggy clothing. She would wear hoodies. She did take that extra step to mask it. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I still stand firm that Laurent was premature.
Oh, yeah.
I don't believe he was full term.
You can even go further than that. The baby that is delivered is teeny-ish.
No, that was very normal size.
But she carries him from the delivery room into the Hall of Saints. And it's a different baby altogether, for sure.
Yes, it is.
Well, kids grow faster in the apocalypse, right? I mean,
There's our
This
answer
is
to
true. We
timeline
know that
problem.
too.
I'm kidding.
We know that that's true.
He went from newborn to 7 months in like 6 steps.
Just
into
down the
other
wall.
room.
Yeah.
Hence
He's
the miracle.
growing in her arms. Yeah, he's just growing bigger. And by the time she got to the far end of the hall, he was 3 years old already.
Law has progeria.
Yeah.
It's Robin Williams all over again. What was that movie again?
Big.
Jack.
Jack.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. This is going to be a Robin
Big.
Williams themed
What?
episode. Anyway,
Robin
Big,
Williams
that's Tom
again.
Hanks.
I know.
I had a friend who got married right out of high school. Nothing insidious about it. She found the person she wanted to be with. Boom. And got pregnant right away. So I was in college first year, visiting her in the hospital for an illness and stuff like that. But later on, she got pregnant. So I'm visiting her in the hospital again. She, up to the moment she gave birth, was not skinny as a rail, not sickly skinny, but she was losing weight during her pregnancy. And you could barely tell that she was pregnant in the 9th month up until the time she gave birth. She looked amazing. And until then, I'd never seen, even after that, I'd never seen anything like that ever again. Now, there are hormones that are produced in pregnancy that will maintain a woman's body weight because those hormones are designed to dump most of the nutrients out, usually into the umbilical cord.
Tell us all about the woman anatomy, please.
I was going to name the chemical, but it escapes me right now. The hormone that allows you to do that. But it's interesting because people will take that hormone to lose weight. So it makes sense. And maybe something was happening with her that made her look up until the point that we even saw the glimmer of it, that she was pregnant.
Look, number one, her sister is obviously living a drug-fueled party girl lifestyle. And so her sister is not going to be particularly noticeable of things like that. She's coked up all the time. She's not really paying attention. Yeah. Number two, who's saying that her sister was not in on that party lifestyle with her? She could have been out there doing drugs and partying and all that stuff. Sure. And that is also why she could have been sick and had the baby early. Mm-hmm. And also why it wouldn't be noticeable because she's been out partying.
I had hyperemesis gravidarum. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I had that with all 4 of my pregnancies and lost a good 25 to 30 pounds before gaining any weight. You vomit for 9 months and can't keep food down and have to get IVs and you're high risk for the whole time.
It's considered extreme morning sickness.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. So you can't keep anything down. You're losing fluids because of the vomiting. Oof.
Oh,
wow.
Yikes.
For like 7 months, people didn't know I was pregnant either.
Oof.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can I just say that yours truly had PTSD flashbacks from Party Girl, Isabel? Yours truly. I was not a thief, but
During that time, did you ever say, sorry, boys?
no, that came later in life.
Sorry, girls.
Yeah,
What's the
I
response
did
to
say sorry, girls. I
There.
did say sorry, girls.
Did you notice the Toulouse-Lautrec poster on the side of the newsstand where the guy had crashed when she came out of the subway and the guy was crashed into the newsstand or whatever? Toulouse-Lautrec was
No, I
a
didn't.
famous painter in the early 1800s. He did the posters for like the Moulin Rouge. Very noticeable, recognizable work.
Oh.
Illustrator, right? Isn't he? Or was he a painter?
Yeah, illustrator. He was a painter,
That's what I thought.
illustrator,
Okay.
artist. He did all kinds of stuff. Yeah. He broke his legs when he was young. Both. He broke one at 13 and one at 14. And because of this disease he had, which the name I cannot remember, it's called the Toulouse-Lautrec syndrome, if you want to look it up. But it basically made it so that his legs didn't heal properly and they never grew after that. So he had
Oh, wow.
child 14, 15-year-old size legs, but the rest of his body grew proportionately to his age, and it made him
Wow.
walk funny. So I'm thinking like maybe he kind of walks like a walker, because he didn't have the right size legs or anything. But anyway,
Oh,
it was just
wow.
an interesting little detail on the side of the newsstand.
Carrying the baby into the Hall of the Saints, let's say, she happens to find Saint Laurent, which is Saint Lawrence. Saint Lawrence existed in 2025 AD and 2058 AD. He was one of the 7 deacons of Rome under Pope Sixtus II, who was martyred in the name of Christianity. His parents happened to be martyrs as well. So that theme tracks a little bit too, in a weird way. Emperor Valerian, Sharon, not Valerian, but Valerian, issued an edict that all bishop, priests, and deacons should immediately be put to death so the riches would be confiscated by the imperial treasury. Saint Laurent was the treasurer for the church, and he was gathered 3 days to gather up the remainder of the church's wealth after murdering Sixtus in a liturgy that he was performing in a cemetery. So he basically murked all the deacons and Pope Sixtus, Emperor Valerian. And after distributing the remainder of the wealth to the rest of the church, the hierarchy of the church, he returned to Emperor Valerian with the city's indigent, blind, crippled, and suffering, and declared that these were the church's true treasures. And of course, was martyred right afterwards, of course. But there's something interesting about that. And in relation to this episode, which is why it was interesting to reveal the name and where Isabel got it from in this episode, is because what if not these children are a representation of that, but in relation specifically to Daryl? Because in this episode, Daryl's concern still by the beginning was getting to the radio so that he can go home. And Isabel's like, so you can get home, even after experiencing all this with the kids? Because you could see it in his face when he's watching the Mork and Mindy television show, and we'll get to that in a second. He's enjoying himself. He's laughing. He's like, oh my God. He literally says, as Norman Reedus, not Daryl Dixon, oh my God. Because it's not Daryl Dixon. That's Norman Reedus.
He said, what? That's what it is.
That's the
he
Norman,
starts
right, that's what it
laughing.
is.
He's like, ha ha ha, what?
What?
And I was like, that's not Daryl.
That's Norman Reedus. So he's sitting there, he's smiling, and kind of like when you see Morgan smile on the Ferris wheel when he's with Grace in the 5th season. That smile all of a sudden relaxes and actually gets. Did I say carousel? Did I not say carousel?
I said Ferris wheel.
Okay, listen, we're gonna nitpick on this.
Ferris Prance.
That's a regional thing. That's a regional. Wait, no, the Ferris wheel is the big one, right?
Ferris wheel goes this way.
That's a
Carousel
regional
goes this
thing.
way.
It's a merry-go-round.
We used to go merry-go-round. That's right. You're right. That's what we used to call it. Anyway, so moving along. It's the same effect. Daryl is having so much fun with these kids. He's enjoying himself. So then he realizes, oh, I'm getting stuck here in this journey. I'm losing sight of the prize. I was wondering myself why his face relaxes. Because that's the case. Because in the bed with Isabel, which wink, wink, wink. I'm just kidding. He goes.
Well, she's not a nun, so it's all he's got to do is throw a fish at her, and it's all over with.
It's over. The game is afoot.
Well, we don't know. We don't know what vow she made after
I
she
feel
arrived
like
there.
she is a nun.
She put her fingers behind her back just because she crossed her
Fucking
fingers.
touch
Like,
my own
I'm a nun
damn
now.
fish.
Anyway, so
Teach a nun to fish. And
teach a nun to le poisson. And anyway, he's concerned because he wants to get to the radio. So you can go back home. And he goes, yeah. What else is there? I'm gonna lie to everybody.
Why did she sound like an angry girlfriend at that point? Though? I was like, you need to calm down. You don't even know this dude. Like, why are you so upset? What, so you can go back home? It was like, what, so you can talk to your friends?
Right.
Calm down.
So there's a whole swirl of things that led me to the idea that she was the one that maybe had to raise Lily, and again now has to raise Laurent. And her partying is obviously her acting out, her being maybe even resentful for having to do so for so long. And then the apocalypse happens, and all of a sudden she's
Amen.
released from that. She's released from that in a sense too. For all these responsibilities, she's released from it. But now she's not released from it. She has to take care of Laurent. So in a way, when she sees Daryl going, how is it that you can ignore these responsibilities or these feelings of being in some way spiritually responsible for these children after being with them and feeding you? And
I don't think that look was about the kids.
I didn't know what it was at first.
That
and
look
then-
is about Merle.
Yeah,
That's about
so, okay.
remembering. That's like that overwhelming sadness that overcomes you when you remember the things that you've been through, the people that you've lost, and you're still losing people because you can't get back home.
Mhm.
And that's all you want.
maybe, right.
Because you've got family now again. After all those years of feeling like you were never going to find family again, you did find family. You have another brother.
Which is why he doubles down.
I'm so glad he's mentioned Merle so many times in this. It's in that episode 10C episode where he meets Leah and he says his brother, but he's not talking about Merle. He's talking about
Merle,
Rick.
yeah.
Yeah.
While I
Me
did
too.
love
I love
that,
that.
it did make me sad that
For
we just
Merle,
like
yeah.
brush past Merle. I
That was my
like that
comment
we
at the
brought
time,
this
too.
back. He's been thinking on Merle and that relationship and what he went through as a child.
Yeah.
And remembering Merle made it easier for him to comfort the boy Moof, who lost his brother, the boy whose brother was the walker in the pit. And right after he took care of that, he went
Julian.
and patted that kid on the shoulder. And then also made it easier for him to comfort Laurent. Great. Yeah, he just met these kids, but he considered him his friends and probably his brothers because he's never been around other kids.
I wanted to go back a little bit to Isabel's attitude with Daryl and the decisions that he's trying to make. And then she's
At the
like,
time.
well, she's kind of coming at him like basically he doesn't know what to do with a kid. I know she asked, does he have kids? And he says no, but I really wanted him to say yes in that moment because, bruh, you have had kids for
Yeah.
years now. They might not be
I
your
was gonna say that
kids, but
same
they're your
thing.
kids. And he literally
Yep.
called them his kids in the later episodes of season 11. That bugged me a little bit for some reason. Sharondy touched on one more thing that I kind of wrote down is just when he took out the boy's brother in the pit. I wrote, he might as well had said sorry, brother, right before he shot him.
Mhm.
Oh.
That was the
Yeah.
feeling that I got in that scene.
And that pat on
Yeah.
Moof's
Yeah.
shoulder.
Well, Lou is the one who shot him though.
Oh, I
No.
thought-
No, it
Lou
was
shot
Daryl.
Julian.
No,
No, Daryl did.
She was
Yeah,
getting
and then
ready to.
Lou never
He-
Lou never released.
She never released?
the arrow.
He
No.
had a
Uh-uh.
crossbow all of a sudden?
He did.
You see
Yeah,
him give it
actually, he
back to
did.
whoever he took it
Oh,
from.
I
did.
was like, from where? He
Yeah.
didn't have
Yeah.
one.
He
He
gave
did.
it right back
Okay.
to the kid
Yeah.
he took it
Okay.
from.
Yeah.
A couple of times now, different people have asked Daryl, "Do you have kids?" And every single time, I wanted him to be like, "Well, they weren't
It's a lot to explain too.
not my flesh children,
My
but
flesh children.
but in a sense, I have had kids. Like I feel like there was a couple of missed opportunities to bring up
Yeah.
Judith and RJ here.
No, but that's actually an interesting point. It's a bigger point than I think you're making, is that he's never felt like he's had to lie to those kids because they're like Rick's kids. They
to
can
Judith and
handle-
RJ.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, they've seen a lot.
Yeah, they've lived in the thick of it. But the whole episode is about the things that we'll say to kids to do what we want them to do or what they need to do or to avoid getting hurt versus telling the truth and then delaying the inevitable and facing hardship during, okay, personal story. When I was a kid, I for the longest time I remember this, and I really railed against my mom because I was smart but not that smart. I needed to get a booster shot for my immunizations and stuff like that. I'm 5 years old, maybe 4, maybe 6, I can't remember. But the suburb I was living in, they had a bunch of either students or whatnot giving dental checks and hearing tests and stuff like that. I've never seen anything like this since, but one of the booths was immunizations, and there's a curtain so you can't really see what's happening. And she goes, no, there's lollipops behind there. She says there's lollipops behind there. And when I
Not a
got there,
lie.
and I said, are they giving them, because I'm smart but I'm not smart, are they giving them shots? Am I gonna get a shot? She goes, no, mommy, you're gonna get a lollipop. You're gonna get 2 lollipops. I get there, there's a shot, and I called her a liar for the longest time. Years as a child. Also maybe a bit in my teenage years. This is how dumb I am, right? But she could have made it eat harder on herself because Rachel, you're a parent. You could have made it harder on yourself by telling the truth and waiting it out and waiting for the kid to understand that you're going to get a disease if you don't get these shots. But she decided to take the quick route. And you know what? She suffered for it.
Since Silas was old enough to ask me if he's getting a shot, I've never lied to him about it.
Yeah, me either.
What was that age, though?
Oh gosh,
They can ask by the time they're like 2 or 3.
yeah, it was
okay.
it was pretty young. I think the first time he asked, he might have been 5 or 6.
But they don't always understand right away.
And I said, yeah, you will, but you're tough. You can handle it. And you're going to get a sucker afterwards.
And
you know?
I did. I got all the suckers
Oh
until
yeah,
age
you got
14.
suckered, all right.
Oh, my poor mom. I think about it today, like how awful I was to her for years. I called her a liar every chance I got. It was terrible.
In terms of preparing the kids, though, we've talked about it before. You have to prepare them for what's out there. Otherwise, they're going to die. So
You got a bunch of graces
preparing
on your hands.
Laurent in any way for what to expect when he goes outside did not do him any favors. Yes, you have to learn reading and poetry and arithmetic and all that, but you also have to learn how to protect yourself. So they've been arming themselves and teaching themselves how to fight, but they haven't taught Laurent. How is that going to benefit him?
That's so
at
messed
all?
up.
They knew that at some point he was going to leave the safeties of the walls and go out in the world. How could they not prepare him for what he was going to see?
Because they're dumb and they think they can protect him.
That too, right? So there is a utility in having to lie to accomplish a goal, though. The show isn't trying to say the opposite, in that you have to tell them everything all at once. And just, you got to go through it. And no, the show's not saying that. The show is saying that sometimes we have to do these things to get by and then maybe explain it in the rear view. The question is when, and you're not always going to get it right.
Lies in the
Band-Aid off.
apocalypse are dangerous.
True.
Too dangerous.
True. Time and place. And there's never going to be the time.
Well, I have something else to say about the Mork and Mindy episode. 1, loved the bicycle power. So fun. Because at first I was like, wait, they have electricity? I was like so confused. But I could hear the whirring of the bikes and I was like, no, I feel like they're pedaling something.
Yeah, you see the kid pedaling.
That was really cool to see it at the front when they pan back around. I love that the kids are like so drawn to Daryl. So this is like a real thing. I can tell when put in like a room of kids who has really active fathers and who doesn't, based on how they interact with men in the room. Because it's rare, but we do have we have one male teacher and we did have a male substitute teacher for a while. And then we have our pastor as well, who travels throughout the school a lot. 1, the kids are always drawn to the men, period, like flat out, because they're stuck with women all of the time. So as soon as there's like a male, they're like, yes, and they like automatically flock to that person. But on top of that, it's like I can tell when kids haven't been around men a ton because they're like especially stuck on that person. They want their attention, they want their affection. And as someone who didn't have a dad for a lot of my childhood, I can attest that it at least for me, it resulted in me being really boy crazy. And that was because I was looking for male approval. Don't worry, I'm working on it with my therapist.
This is going to be a twist.
So I just really enjoyed seeing the kids loving him so much because they haven't had a dad. They're alone, in the world, and they just have Madame Dubois as their like parent. And so I just thought that was really, really sweet. Those 2 littlest ones especially are like hugging on him and they're like, Daryl, Monsieur Daryl, come sit by us. Like, it's just so cute. I really loved it. It was so accurate. It's so true to real life.
Well, and also he's called Father Daryl too. So it's like weird.
They've also probably been conditioned to think of men as dangerous in the apocalypse because they are.
So when they get a chance to not.
So when you have a man there who's obviously a good guy because Lou has accepted him and he's a kind person and he's a man of God as far as they know, it's even more important to them because they finally have a male that is safe and they don't have to be afraid of, because they're afraid of the troll in the castle who's a man.
Nothing says it better than when, first of all, as a spiritual figure, and second of all, as a father figure, like a literal father figure, Daryl is slurping his soup, and every one of them follows suit because they all want to follow Daddy Daryl.
It's so cute.
Daddy Daryl.
As a model of spirituality, right?
I have that written in my notes.
Model.
It says Father Daryl, more like Daddy. That's what I wrote in my notes. Anyway.
Just like Laurent copying him in the first episode. Because that's what Laurent was doing in the first episode, was mimicking what he was doing. on the other side of the courtyard.
I like that was more out of curiosity and not immediately embracing him in a sense. He was more probing him with questions and trying to get more feedback from him. He's cautious enough, which I liked. The kids kind of glommed onto him. Oh, he's a father figure. He's a father in the church, whatever. But Laurent takes his time.
I think that just has to do more with age. These other kids are much younger, and so they're going to be more likely to be more affectionate immediately than Laurent's age and up. The episode of Mork and Mindy was on, I looked it up. It was episode 22 of season 4 of Mork and Mindy. So at this point, they're married. It's called The Mork Report. I have the script up for it. In this episode, I thought it was interesting. I did go and watch like the beginning part. This is not the beginning. This is like a couple minutes into the episode. So it was kind of interesting. But at one point they're sleeping and Mork wakes up and gets out of bed and is trying to rouse Mindy like up, and he howls at her. And so it made me think like maybe watching this episode so often, because like, yeah, we think of the Lost Boys and Rufio and all of these other like Robin Williams connections. This may have been all that they've seen. And so I thought the howl, like maybe it came from that. So I just thought that was kind of cute that it was it's like immediately before the scene that we see.
Interesting.
Aww.
Yeah.
Just on the whole, Mork and Mindy is very apropos to the story because Mork is someone from another world.
Fish out of water.
Comes to Boulder, Colorado, and meets a woman, Mindy Isabel, and she helps guide him through the pitfalls and stuff of Earth while he continues to be very much himself because Mork is Mork.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to have as many fun adventures as Mork and Mindy did, but also he's always calling back to his home planet, so that's also what Daryl's trying to do.
It's also very interesting because the first season was supposed to be all about him adapting to mostly American culture and it not quite working out. You see it all throughout this episode. Everybody's being prim and proper and setting the places and eating their soup with spoons, and he's just slurping his shit, and it's just really anyway.
I just made a connection. He must be related to Jenny.
Because the fingers in the jam from Jenny from Fear the Walking Dead, season 6 and 5. I read a little bit about Mork and Mindy and how I don't think they even got together at all in the first season because they were supposed to be just like friends.
Yeah, the romantic things came like season 3 or 4 is when they got the romance.
I think it even started in season 2 because according to the show, it was competing against other shows like Laverne and Shirley at the time, and they felt like they had to punch it up to get a wider audience, meaning they had to get together so they could capture maybe a younger audience, like early 20s, maybe teens. And that's why it kind of went off into the distance, especially after Robin Williams had a comedy career beforehand and he kind of just took off anyway. And
then they had a baby and the baby was Jonathan Winters.
Of course it was.
Really weird.
They jumped the shark.
Bridget, that is so appropriate because Mork and Mindy is a spinoff of Happy Days.
Happy Days.
Which is where Jump the Shark
original Jump the Shark
came from. Yeah.
Right.
Mork visited Fonzie.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just a crossover.
It was an episode of Happy Days.
I didn't know it was a spinoff.
He landed on Earth and he met Laverne and Fonzie. I guess they'd already jumped the shark by then to have an episode where an alien comes on.
Exactly.
It was so popular that they made a show out of it. So
in Mork and Mindy, it's the Benjamin Button thing. A lot of people don't know the show. So when you're born, you're old. And then as you get older, because you see a lot of old people, but they're really kids. And so they age in reverse. So just for context.
That's why it's Jonathan
Which is good for
Winters.
this episode because these kids are older and wiser because they have to be too, in a sense. I don't know if it's going to close out the Mork and Mindy conversation, but like, come on, Daryl in suspenders. It's like, because on the show, Mork and Mindy, Robin Williams' character, Mork from Ork, wears these rainbow suspenders most of the time.
I had those suspenders when I was a kid.
I think I had them I borrowed them. They were a hand-me-down. Ugh.
I know somewhere I've got a picture of myself. I'm roller skating and I've got those suspenders on.
You know what I did had because my little sister would wear it. We all had our signature uniforms, which is really weird. But my little sister had a yellow ski hat, whatever, that had the little Nanu Nanu hand signal. And I stole it from her. It's fine. I did.
If I were in this situation, I would have had the same reaction to seeing Mork and Mindy. Like I didn't watch it when it aired, obviously, but I caught reruns. I absolutely have seen Mork.
Shut up, Rachel.
Yet another reason why the kids kind of glom onto him, because he is strange and talks funny and does funny things to them from their point of view. So they're used to it.
Yeah,
but
I'm
also
sure that
not
seems
used
like
to
a
it.
really Mork moment where he's slurping the soup.
Slurping the soup. Yeah. Like, oh, it's so funny. He doesn't know how to eat right.
They're all thinking, that's so Mork. They just think about it in your head. It's like, but for us, it's so different.
Is that the only episode they have? Is that like just one
I
episode?
felt like
they
I
just
think
had that
so,
one,
because they
yeah.
were like quoting it.
But we did that as kids, didn't we, though? With a lot of things. We'd watch this movie over. I watched The Goonies. I stopped counting after the 100th time with my siblings. And it was a version of it that was recorded from television.
Not
we had two versions.
I was going to say, which ending did you have, Dave?
Well, and there were whole scenes missing from the middle of it that we got later on because, of course, we bought it later on in life because it was the thing we loved the most. But we would still do it over and over again.
Yo, this was like 2008. There were DVD players and DVDs. Go out and get a collection. What is it with the VHS?
Listen, I eventually did. But
VHS is way harder to find in
the kids.
2008 than some DVD players.
RJ was hoarding all of them up in his castle. This is the only one they could get their hands on. He was like, Morgan, Mindy, screw it. And he just left it. That's why they have it.
Useless.
Yeah, this is the I hated this show.
I'm RJ Gaines. By the way, when I thought the episode was called Old Fears, and the whole point of that story was Mork decides to disguise himself as an old person to comfort Mindy's grandmother, Cora, because she had just lost a friend. And he tries to comfort her, and they're getting really close. But the whole point of that is that he lies to Cora in order to comfort her. And I thought that was an interesting kind of reflection of what's going on here, too.
Well, I will say the beginning of this episode that we do see does have to do with lying to protect someone's feelings, because Mindy is given a dress by Mork that he falls off a truck, essentially, because he finds a man on the side of the road in a truck that had broken down. And then he goes on to say that the guy kind of looked like Mindy. It's really weird. Anyway, it was really weird. Anyway, he ends up buying this dress, and she clearly does not like it, like based on her facial expressions and the way that she's responding. I couldn't tell. I didn't like rewatch this portion of it, but from what it said, it was like Roy Rogers would be jealous of it. So it seemed like it was like really like I think it was kind of like almost like a patent
country western,
a patent leather, but it was like brown, you know, like a tan patent leather dress, and it had like a weird like ruffle on one side, and like it was really interesting. And he's like, "You look so good, I gotta take you out, we gotta go out for dinner." And she's like, "I don't have shoes that go with this, I can't wear this." And he's like, "Funny you would say that. I bought a pair of shoes from a man named Bubba." And like, he has these like matching shoes that go with it. But anyway, she's trying to protect his feelings. She really hates it. Like, very clearly does not want to wear it. So that did still apply.
Lies.
Yeah.
There you go. All these lies that have to be told to Mork because he doesn't understand.
Her grandmother Cora was like the Sophia prototype.
I was going to talk about the prayer at the table, Daryl's prayer,
okay,
where they ask him to pray.
Appropriate.
Which one? I laughed hysterically because he had already started eating. So it's like
just beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's like, so he's just like, oh, okay. He like wipes his hand on his shirt. Like, oh, okay.
Classic Daryl.
Yeah, he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, we're saying grace now. And I love that they ask him to pray, and he's like saying grace. And he could have
He
been
should have
like,
licked his fingers first, though. No.
He
Anyway,
did.
sorry.
He did.
He did.
He did.
Okay.
He licks his hand and wipes it. Anyway.
Good, you caught that.
Yeah, I love that he could have said no. He could have turned this down. He could have not done it. But instead, because the kids were asking, and I'm sure he feels some sort of obligation because Isabel has lied about who he is to them, but he didn't have to. And I love that he does, and he just speaks from the heart. It's really endearing, and from a Christian perspective, it was like a sweet prayer. It was an honest prayer, And that's what God wants out of us, like when we talk to him. And he doesn't want you to like lie to him, or you could just recite like a prayer that you know, which is fine. And you do that in times of like, I don't really know what to say, so I'm going to say this, or like, this is a prayer that I know off the top of my head, so I'm just going to say it. But speaking from the heart, having those like honest conversations with God, that's a real thing. And I loved how heartfelt this was. It was very moving as a person, but then deeper for me because of my background as well.
I 100% expected him to do like good food, good eats, good God, let's eat. That is, I expected him 100% to say something like that.
Yeah.
I should say this. He would. I just imagine him beforehand just going, "Let's join hands." First of all, he's like very solemn. Rub-a-dub-dub.
Thanks for the grub.
Thanks for the grub.
Thanks for the grub.
Amen. And the amen. The amen is important.
I wouldn't have been
But,
mad
like,
about
first
that
it's,
either.
like,
That would
very
have been
serious.
fine. That would have been fine too.
So there's two things I can springboard off of to touch on. I wanted to go back just for a second to the Mork and Mindy, watching it over and over again. In Judaism, there's a concept called, I forget what it's called, but it's that God prefers the thing that we do most often to be first, at least in terms of the order of how we do things. And you would think, because we're, in modern times, we think, oh, the special thing is probably the thing we should do first before the thing we normally do. The once in a lifetime holidays and stuff like that. No, where we get this directly from is that the Sabbath, if there's a holiday that falls on the Sabbath, we do the Sabbath things above the holiday thing. So like just this weekend, we had Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year's. It's 5784, by the way. And so we do the Shabbos prayers primarily. The services are geared around the Sabbath. And then we sneak in some of the Rosh Hashanah stuff. The only exception to this rule is next week we'll have Yom Kippur. If it fell on a Sabbath, we would have to fast. That's the only exception. Now, so when you go back to Mork and Mindy and you watch it over, that in a sense is a weird kind of way of saying that's your prayer. That's your regular service. There's a specialness to the recurrence and the repetition of something. But then you go to what you were saying about things from the heart. Isaiah's prayer. Lou says she reads Isaiah's prayer to Madame Dubois to get better. The interesting thing about what you just said was that, and this happens also with Hannah and Samuel, like when Hannah is praying to get pregnant with the prophet Samuel, she prays in silence. And it's noticeable because we don't pray in silence. It's not something that we do, but she does it anyway. So Hezekiah in English, but Hezekiah, he's also a very important figure in prophets. He falls deathly ill. And the prophet Isaiah, Yeshayahu in Hebrew, he says, get your house in order. That's where we get the phrase from. You are going to die, get your house in order, because you're going to die and you're not going to live. He says this, you're going to die and you're not going to live. So treat it as though it's happening. What if not, first of all, is this episode? Tell the truth. Act like you know. But in that moment, even though he says the truth, it's like in reverse. He says the truth to him first, but then he goes back and says, okay, let me give you the belief part now. At the same time, Yeshayahu faces away from Hezekiah and he says, I beseech you, O Lord, remember how I have walked before you in truth and with a perfect heart, and I've done that which is good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly, right? Talking from the heart, he felt these words, right? And I'm going to say it in the biblical way, and it came to pass before Yeshayahu had gone to the middle of the court, and the word of the Lord came to him, saying, turn back and tell Hezekiah, the prince of my people, thus says the Lord, the God of David, your father, I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. Behold, I will heal you. On the third day, you shall go up to the house of the Lord, and I will add to you 15 years, and I'll deliver you and the city out of the hand of the king of the Ashurite king, the king of Ashur. And I will defend this city for my own sake and for the sake of my servant David. Then there's a whole thing about healing and all that stuff, which, okay, could be spooky beta shit in this show. Maybe Laurent can do this cool shit. But the whole point of this is he does this whole time travel thing to prove to Hezekiah that he can actually heal him. Because Yeshayahu just told him that he was going to die. And so like, now I need proof that you talked to God and said I was going to live now. So it's just interesting what you're saying about talking from the heart, how that has the ability to move people and set the stage for what's to come and could change things too. Because Daryl, it follows that when he says his prayer with the kids, then he's with Mork and Mindy and they're all on him and he's happy. You can see him. He's like, no way. And Norman Reedus. But then he gets to the bed and then he remembers, act as if you're going to die. What do you want to do before you die? You want to go home. You want to be with your family. And then Isabel reminds him, family is who you're with. And he knows this because how did Rick become his brother? Even though he had a brother, or has at the time he had a brother. And he chose Rick to be his brother.
I feel like he started to remember while he was still watching Mork and Mindy instead of like once he got away from it.
Yeah, exactly. But like these things were happening all at once, and he remembered. Yeah, it's interesting. We have a rowdy bunch of analysts on our hands.
He was also thinking about the poor donkey and reminding him of Buttons.
From the horse from The Walking Dead. Rick's horse? From the first episode, was it?
Buttons is the one he was catching with Aaron.
Buttons is the one he was going with Aaron, after with Aaron.
Right, right.
Got eaten in the corral.
I am so happy that things turned out the way that they did. I was so nervous. As we know, we've seen it time and time again where our characters show up someplace and then the place just gets demolished. We've seen it already. So when they showed up and met all of these children, like I immediately was like, no,
I was so happy.
No.
I like
not Fear the Walking Dead again. This is a Padre situation, isn't it? All these children, no parents. I did write that down a little bit though.
I didn't write it in my notes, but I remember thinking Sharon D won't hate this. Because they didn't die. They actually left with the same number theoretically. They lost one person, but they brought someone back who had been missing.
Yeah.
So technically, it's exactly the same. Status quo.
One kid with another.
Madame Dubois died. We can assume from natural causes, right? Nobody came in and killed her, you know, viciously. This was not our fault.
No,
we didn't cause this. So I was so happy. But the second I found out this was like a community of children, I'm like, oh no, please no.
I wrote,
we're gonna fuck this up.
I wrote, hey, writers and producers, do not kill these kids.
Right.
We'll just forget they ever existed and never hear about them again.
Oh yeah, like in season.
They're with the season 5 Fear Kids.
They're
with the Cackleberry kids.
Right, they're in the caverns or the catacombs. Let's adapt it. Do you want to know what Madame Dubois was dying from?
I didn't know what she was taking. What was she taking?
Are you basing this on the medications that were sitting there?
Yeah, she was taking metformin, which is used to treat type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
And she went on a steep decline without them, basically, which leads to the Isaiah's prayer.
Which kind of makes it extra interesting when Daryl was in RJ's bunker looking through things. He grabs a handful of syringes and then puts them down.
Yep. He still brings back medicine to her, but
it's too late.
It's too late.
Like I said, I didn't get a good look at it, so I didn't know what it was. But I was hoping whatever this medication was he was bringing back, that the rest of the kids could use it somehow if needed. Like maybe antibiotics or painkiller or something along those lines. But if it's specifically for diabetes, it's going to help.
Well, dude's dead now. They can go back whenever they want.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
They could even use it as a new place if they wanted to, essentially.
I mean, seemed like a pretty nice place to hold up.
Which brings me to the school Simone Vale. So I did look at where it is. It makes 100% complete sense that they kind of came across this school because it's very close to where Daryl landed, basically.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. And also Simone Vale herself, which is a very powerful French woman. She was a French magistrate, survived the Holocaust. She served as health minister in several governments. From 79 to 82, she was the president of the European Parliament, which first woman to hold that office. She's remembered best for advancing women's rights in France, in particular, the 1975 law that legalized abortion, which is known today as the Veil Act.
Did she have like a lot of initiatives that were education based?
I believe so, because they do.
Just because the school's named after her. So I would assume that she was big on furthering education.
Yeah, it goes into a lot more detail about some educational and some constitutional things that she did. But I focus more on like the women's rights.
Yeah. I didn't get too deep into her thing.
I'm going to attempt to say exactly where this is in case you want to look at it on the map. I mean, if you look for School Simone Vale, it should pop up, but it's at Place Roger Peck.
Place Roger Peck? Roger?
La Tour de France 66720. I don't know how to read that, but that's where it is.
You pretty much got it. It's fine. Roger. St. Joseph, as you may or may not know, is obviously Jesus's actual
Not
back up.
biological father, sir.
Not biological.
No,
Was
that's
it
the
his
Jewish
biological
belief
father?
that it was his biological father. Not on my end, sir.
Nope.
Let's just
Nope.
that'll serve as a thing. Cool. Okay, so
His
you get-
earthly father.
Yeah, there you go.
Joseph is Mary's wife, who happens to be around when the Son of God is
What?
born.
Mary's husband.
Joseph is Mary's wife.
Yeah, no, that's real.
There we
No,
go.
We're sticking with that. The prayer goes as follows, and you'll see how it ties into the episode. O glorious Saint Joseph, to you God committed the care of his only begotten Son. Amid the many dangers of this world, we come to you and ask you to take under your special protection the children God has given us. Through holy baptism, they became children of God and members of his holy church. We consecrate them to you today, that through this consecration they may become your foster children. Guard them, guide their steps in life, form their hearts after the hearts of Jesus and Mary. Saint Joseph, who felt the tribulation and worry of a parent when the child Jesus was lost, protect our dear children from time and eternity. May you be their father and counselor. Let them, like Jesus, grow in age as well as in wisdom and grace before God and men. Preserve them from the corruption of this world, interesting tie, and give us the grace one day to be united with them in heaven forever. Amen.
Fun fact about me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm named after Joseph's mom.
What's her mom's name? Rachel? Rachel? The spelling's right.
No, it's not.
No, it is Rachel. So you're Rachel.
I have that extra A in my name. My mom had to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, Rachel.
Yeah, I thought it was that way in the Bible, though. I was like,
Yeah, yeah, it is.
I thought it was traditional EL.
It's technically Rachel, so Rachel, Ale, like Aziraphale.
Okay.
you got to say your name a lot more phlemmy than you do.
Yeah.
It's not Rachel. It's Rachel.
And if you're Sephardic like me, you say Rachel. Anyway,
Yeah, there you
whatever.
go.
It doesn't matter. That's a lost cause. Most Sephardics can't even do that. Anyway, it's kind of interesting because this is the prayer that Lou asks the nuns to recite.
Mm-hmm.
And, Lauren's kind of like, yeah, I think I know this one. But right away, top of the dome, Sylvie and Isabel know this one. And they're like, that's the basis of the trust too, is that this is something that we say because we need to. And it also kind of gets their intentions of these people. A, to see that they're legit, but B, if you're our people, if you're destined to be in this moment.
I feel like as her number one fan, I have to point out
Sylvie's
that
number
this
one
was
fan. That's who she's
also
talking about.
Gotcha. I was waiting to hear who the fan was.
Sylvie.
After the last episode, she's like, I am a Sylvie stan. And everyone's like, who the hell is Sylvie?
She lives in Sylvie for all her Sylvieites.
it was more kept in the background, but it was also a lot Sylvie's backstory.
Mhm.
And we get to understand that she pretty much lived the exact same life that Laurent is living now, not knowing who she is, where she came from, why she is where she is. But I did write down, but they allowed her to become a badass and he's a wuss. I don't understand.
Well, beating up on Laurel again, but I get why you're saying
Part
that. In
of
this
it
episode,
is
he's kind of
she's not
bratty.
directly related to anybody that was there.
This is true.
One. Two, I imagine they did know a little bit about her backstory, not a ton, but they probably would have known her parents' names and stuff since she was dropped off there by her parents. So I assume that they just hadn't come to get her yet. So I figured she went there for schooling. So they would have known a fair amount about her life. And she was old enough to remember her parents and stuff like that. So she does have more backstory than Laurent does, because they just straight up have not told him anything, which is like rude. But to be fair, what are you going to tell him? Well, your mom died and then you came out of her.
Actually,
While
your
she
aunt.
was a walker.
And then somehow you were 6 months old. And also your dad may or may not have been this pimp like douchebag.
And that's a huge maybe. but
Richie's
I get you.
convinced that guy is a handler.
He is
That's
so
immediately
creepy.
what he said.
I was like, if I had thought that she wasn't stealing and instead was a prostitute, this dude is for sure her pimp.
And The Walking Dead does this thing sometimes where some of these things are unspoken truths.
It's something about it. And the way that he holds on to her face, and there's just like a lot of like really stuff about him. I don't like him.
He never told her that he loved her or anything, right? Like it was all about, I've taken care of you, haven't I? Haven't I always taken
And who
care
says
of
that?
you?
Pimps.
Yeah,
right,
pimps.
Right. Very, very astute.
His name is Quinn, which was also the name of the guy in Fear 412 Week, the guy that stole Swatty.
This is June's mirror image, basically. Yeah. Write it down, Rachel. Write it in the book of names.
I am
Amen.
right now.
Amen.
So Richie has this whole like storyline thought up of where there's a ring of females that go around and just pickpocket people, and this
It's kind of where
guy,
my
like,
head went. With the exception of she was able to keep the money.
right.
So that's why I was like, maybe not. That's the only reason that I was like, maybe I'm not getting the right vibe from this.
I'm so glad that you said something, because my mind went to the direction of what she was doing with him was the same thing she was doing with the people in the bar. Meaning she somehow roped this boyfriend with means and is cheating on him.
Here's the other thing.
See, naive
They're
me.
in a huge city.
Stupid.
They're in a huge city. How did he know where she was?
That's what I keep. Oh yes.
Oh, the JJ
Yes.
LoJack. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was weird. Unless he's tracking
she
her
did-
phone. Was
Right.
Find My Friends a thing in 2008?
You want to know how
Maybe.
more naive I am, by the way? More naive than what I just said to you about, oh, he's just one of her marks. Yeah, that sort of thing. I thought that he had ties to her parents. They were his driver. And in their absence, he would take care of her as the, the person that's managing the home front.
All right,
That guy
I'm
was
gonna go ahead and
He
say
was
this,
a
Dave.
creep.
You are
He
a
was a whole
horrible
creep.
judge of character because that guy was the
He was
worst.
such a creep.
Based
He
on
was
the
a
very
creep,
little
yeah.
evidence that I received.
He's the worst.
Yeah.
Just gonna call
no,
it.
he is and he was taking advantage of the daughter. So there's that.
Well,
Guaranteed, we're gonna see this guy again.
Another one of her
Guaranteed.
marks.
I think so. He had a gun on him.
I thought that at the
Yeah.
end of my watch. I said, well, it wouldn't be interesting to see this guy again.
Yeah, I feel like he's gonna
Could
come
be.
back.
He doesn't have to. I don't
firmly,
care, but
I'm a firm believer that he is the dad. I'm a
Yeah.
firm
He's
believer.
Laurent's father.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
that settled on it. It
I
would
think
be
so,
interesting.
too.
That's why Lily wouldn't say anything about who the father was.
And she said, "I was afraid you would be mad." Those are her like exact words.
Because
Mhm.
of the relationship they have.
Yeah.
That's nebulous, and we don't know what's going on here, but we do.
Because what other reason would she have to hide a pregnancy?
Right. Which means she knows too.
This would be a very far stretch, but unless, in addition to being, a
Oh.
prostitute for this horrible guy, she was like bottom bitch and like sort of also had somewhat control over the lower tiered prostitutes in this hierarchy. She might have been like a team with Quinn. You know what I mean? And she doesn't want her girls getting pregnant.
So Isabel doesn't want. Is she okay? She has like a
Right.
relationship. Okay, gotcha.
But then I backtrack and I'm like, this is her sister too, though. Like,
That's
would
kind
she
of what I was
Plus,
thinking.
do that?
I don't
to
know.
her
It doesn't.
sister?
It seems kind of weird because
I don't
when she
know.
brings Lily down with her, she's like, "I'm not leaving my sister behind," and he seems almost
Yeah.
like, "Okay, like where did she come
Yeah.
from?"
Where did she come from?
So
Yeah.
I was almost like, "What's
No, he
going
did
on
know-
here?"
Yeah.
You know what? You're right. That there is that. Who is this person?
But are you
Sounding
overcompensating for the fact that you bang that chick and put a
Right.
baby in her?
And if he knows that she's pregnant with his kid, wouldn't he want even more so to get rid of her?
Well,
That's kind of what I was thinking.
that's
before.
he was really trying to sell
Mhm.
her on getting
Mhm.
her out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Because what does it do for you? So what? You bring her with, and there's not a baby doctor.
Right.
You're saying
Right.
you're coming back to Paris in a couple days. You don't care if she's along or not. There's something else going
Mhm.
on there. It was suspicious.
Yeah.
You can even go as far as to say this. He's not the baby daddy, but when Isabel is out on the prowl, maybe he or Lily approached him to be involved in his business. And he's like, yeah, I could use another bitch. And then she goes out and gets herself pregnant with one of the clientele. And of course, he's responsible for that. Isabel having tried to shield her from that life.
Yeah,
and that's
but
why she would be angry.
a pimp wouldn't care
Pimp
about
does
that.
sample the merchandise sometimes, yes. But
This reminds me. So
But-
I just watched Idiocracy again the other day, and I don't know if you guys remember the beginning of that
what a
movie.
gear shift.
Well, at the beginning
Yeah,
of that
of course.
movie, when they're talking about who they've gotten to do the study, the science, like that head guy who's like running that whole operation, he talks about Upgrade. Upgrade is the pimp of Maya Rudolph's character. Maya
Right,
Rudolph's
right.
character is a hooker, but Luke Wilson is so oblivious that he doesn't get it. But Upgrade is like her ex-boyfriend is what they call him in the movie, but he's her pimp.
He's the pimp, right? And he'll find out,
And
right?
the guy
That's
at the
whole
beginning
thing.
of the study is like, and as we all know, pimping ain't easy. And like he does, like, it just is like so good. It's so funny. And that's what the catalyst for the whole movie, because he gets arrested. That guy who's the head of the program gets arrested for being involved in the ring, in the pimp ring, because he becomes besties with Upgrade. And it's like UPPGGRAYYET or something. It's like the stupidest.
Wow.
It's the stupidest spelling. That's not it exactly, but anyway, great movie. Crossover point to Tales of the Walking Dead because it stars Terry Crews.
right,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
As President Camacho. Yeah.
President.
Camacho. Mountain Dew
Nice.
is in his name somewhere. President Dwayne Elizondo, Mountain Dew, Herbert Camacho.
Herbert Camacho. Okay, so let's jump to the castle where RJ Gaines, not Grimes, is held up. Our beloved Lone Star State Texan, stuck in France. Sounds familiar.
From Giddings,
First of all.
Texas.
Giddings, Texas. The first thing I wrote down in my second watch, obviously, is this is a mirror reflection for Daryl. Not just because of the obvious on the nose shit. It's because what RJ Gaines says, I have a wife and kids to get back to, and you got to do what you can to get by. This is his whole
Mhm.
modus operandi. He's the extreme opposite parallel of Daryl. Same background, but different characters. And this is just off the heels of telling Isabel, that's what I'm here for. I'll lie and do whatever I need to do to get to where I need to be, which is home. And here's this character doing the same thing, but in like an extreme version. He sees children all around him and he can't wait to screw them over.
Well,
Unlike Daryl, who takes the time to help people in need.
let's say this. I want to preface this conversation with, clearly this guy's not mentally well.
After 12 years
I don't know
trying
that
to get back home.
I don't know that this was the person that he originally was. I don't want to be like, I don't want this to become like an America is the worst trope. Okay. Like
In The Last of Us, when Ron Swanson went and cleaned out the town of everything, we were like, yeah, that's the smart thing to do. But now this guy does it and we're like, oh, he's evil. So, it's perspective.
It's all in the perspective.
Mhm.
So that's the thing. Cause I was like, this guy, man after my own heart, he's got a hoarding pile. Yeah, he's a prepper.
He went couponing. Got
It's
some
like if you like to coupon,
Toothpaste
we've
to put
got
on
stuff to
crackers.
talk about. You know what I mean?
I think he does. It's a match made in hell. Anyway.
Oh my
First of all,
gosh.
let's apologize in advance for Kira's belly aching, literal. Anyway. You just made
And
it
he's
up.
got
so good
toothpaste.
toothpaste.
Me too, because you know what? You get it for free when you coupon. So
To eat.
It made
I don't
me
need
think
it.
of my favorite episode on The Walking Dead, which is 610, where
They
Rick
can't
is
find any
looking for
toothpaste.
toothpaste for Michonne,
yeah,
Yes.
and they find the toothpaste because
it's at the bottom of the lake.
It's in the truck that Daryl and Rick then later roll into the river, into the lake.
Mhm.
To be fair, Jesus was kind of fucking shit up for them.
Dave, did you
What
just
can
say
you do?
that Jesus fucked everything up? Because
Yeah,
that's-
Jesus always Oh.
I mean,
Well, for us, mostly. Everybody's like, what is happening? Charity started it. I buried it though. So it's fine. It's a cure. The non-believers
And I'm
rolling.
gone.
Yeah.
Dave, I gotta go to work.
Literally, I just got
Jesus,
raptured. Bye, guys.
Bye.
That was actually a tractor beam from an alien. Sorry.
my favorite part of RJ Gaines is when he's hanging off the bridge and he's like, I'm an American.
Oh my God. Okay. That's when I was like, when he yelled, I'm an American. I was like,
Fair
oh,
warning, Mr. Gaines.
Walkers don't care.
He's just trying to warn the walkers that as an American, he's probably full of McDonald's and KFC and Taco Bell. And so they should
he's going to be
careful
really
in
good.
eating
He's going to be
him.
great tasting.
Yeah.
He's all those
Just
walkers
like gum,
are
it
gonna
never
have
leaves your
diarrhea.
system.
He's
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true.
he's not very nutritious.
When he said that, all I could think was, oh my God, I'm so glad this doesn't air in France. That was all I could think was because I was like, I don't need anyone to think that this is real. I can guarantee you, if I'm being eaten by walkers, I'm not yelling, please stop, I'm an American. I'm not yelling that. That's literally the last thing I would yell. Like, I would be like, oh no, God help me. Someone
Memento
kill
mori.
me.
Screams, shrieks.
Just literally anything other than I'm an American. So when I saw that, I was like, oh no, I don't. Like, this does not bode well for the American people.
They should have, you know what? We should just go like communist China and just edit it out for American audiences. And then for here in France,
my gosh.
You know,
I love the little joke they throw in there when they're introducing Daryl to Lou and the others, and she's like, he's like, he doesn't speak French, and she's like, after all this time, he's like, American.
Americans.
Oh,
Americans.
That's Father Daryl you're talking about.
I mean, that was funny and accurate.
Does tie well.
So it's fine.
The American R.J. Gaines is played by an actor named Brian Dennehy, who is Irish.
Dennehy.
Okay? I was going to say that's the most Irish name I've ever heard, other than like Brian
did I say Ned? I said Ned Dennehy,
or
right?
something.
But like, and if it was McManus, we'd say he's Scottish. No, so it's Ned Dennehy, who's been in obviously a bunch of things that you might know him from: Outlander, Peaky Blinders, but most notably for me and relevant to this series, an Australian television show called Glitch. Glitch was a show about.
I watched
that
Glitch.
show.
Yeah,
You can watch it on Netflix.
It was crazy,
and it's about basic. He's one of the
It
dead.
was weird.
He's one of the dead that rises in this show. You're talking about people.
I knew I recognized him.
And it's not just the recent dead. You're talking about dead that have been long dead throughout the Australia's history, from right when the establishment of Australia happened. And this character, who just a little bit afterwards, his character on the show is an Irishman who winds up in Australia, and it has a lot to do with Australian history and stuff like that. But you find out later on in the series that there is a bit of a spiritual component to the show, and I am spoiling the second season in a sense, but I would definitely take a moment to watch his role. He has, unlike some of his roles like on Peaky Blinders and on Outlander, he does have a more prominent role in that series.
Glitch is one of those shows that started off really good and then kind of went off the rails.
Yeah, that's the second season mostly.
Yeah.
The first season, I thought it was going to end after the first season. No,
I did too. No, Glitch.
And then they came back. And to be fair, I really did like the main actor. He's a very funny comedian from sketch comedy.
Really?
Yeah, the main actor.
I did not know he was a comedian.
I will look up his name and I'll give it to you. But the main actor.
Because he's not funny on this show.
No, he's such a tragic role. And then so I've seen him do sketch comedy and stuff like that. He's hilarious, deadpan hilarious. But seeing him do this heavy, so I wanted to see him for a second season, and we got it, and it was really weird. I was like, I thought the show was over.
It's weird. I love his version of the American accent, though.
I loved him, and
no, he's great.
I thought he was great, and also his eyes. Okay, so his eyes really sold the like the manic crazy. He reminded me a lot of what was her name, Claire. Second season of The Walking Dead, the crazy woman in the woods.
Daryl meets her.
Clara,
the one that Rick meets.
Rick meets
with the head in the box
in a bag.
She's trying to feed Rick to her husband.
That look, that expression, like on her face, he like was giving that expression. So that's what it reminded me of. Also, he had a walker moat, which is incredible.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That was awesome.
I wanted to mention the walker moat. Yes.
Case closed.
He's an American hero. I don't even care what anybody else says.
It helps to have a moat pre-built for you.
Yes. But filling it with walkers is a great idea.
Ned Dennehy was Lionel Brown on Outlander.
I haven't gotten there yet, I don't think.
Case in point.
Okay.
Yeah.
The show or the movie?
The show.
Season 6.
Okay.
It was in the latter season.
It's like season 5 and 6.
Oh, weird. They're in France on that show too.
There you go. So it was convenient for him.
In that scene, there's one little shout out, a little Jaws homage by blowing up the compressed air tank to take out the walkers, because that's how they took out Jaws. Spoiler alert, y'all. That's how they took out Jaws in the first movie. They blew up the compressed air tank.
Spoiler. And there was fuel there too, by the way, because that was one of the things they stole from the children is petrol as well. A lot of damage done that day. You know what? Daryl did get away with destroying a place. Just not the way it usually happens.
In a different way.
Seems like the structure held up, though.
Yeah, no, I think the whole thing pretty much held up.
It just blew up the moat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They'll find more. They'll find more. They always find more.
They kill that guy or whatever, and all they take is, like, they didn't take all the rest of the supplies. Like, go back and get the rest of the supplies, people.
Well, that's what I was saying. The kids
Mhm.
can
He
go
doesn't need them
back
anymore.
and
Yeah,
they have
restock.
time.
They've
They have
got
time.
time now. Because I doubt there's other
Yeah.
people in that area.
Yeah.
They slayed the dragon.
Mhm.
Ned Dennehy.
They did.
RJ Gaines.
Yeah. So the history lesson. Did you guys look up the?
Le Tarak?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did look up that.
There were two beasts, mythical beasts. Well, one's not really mythical. We don't know
Let's
what
talk
it was.
about the second one first.
Okay.
They're playing hide and seek just beforehand.
Mhm.
But the game of slaying La Bête de Gévaudan, it's basically where the game hide and seek comes from, essentially. La
Oh,
Bête de Gévaudan.
Okay.
It was a beast that hides and rises to attack others. It was legend from between 1764 and 1767. A mysterious creature called the Beast ravaged a rural region of Gévaudan, is a region in France. About 100 men, women, and children reportedly fell victim. France was in a slump at the time on the heels of the 7 Years' War. So there are many encounters with the beast that were very heroic, but one in particular was with children who heroically fought it off, basically. So it's a very interesting interplay with the whole hide and seek concept. You're taking this beast that hides and seek, and people are seeking him out to slay it. And so it's very interesting. This is where the game comes from, essentially. Going back to La Tarasque, okay, that's the lizard. That legend is based on,
From what I read, it was all over the place. It had the head of a lion, the body of like a turtle or like a turtle shell covering, for
Turtle-esque
the legs
shape.
of a bear. It was like it's
yeah,
like,
the claws of a bear,
it's like so many different things mashed into one.
the tail of a serpent, and could blow poison smoke. That's what it was. It was another.
Sure.
Which, by the way, I did not understand at first what the gas masks were that the children were wearing at first. But if you think about it and you go back to the explanation of La Tarasque and it could blow poison smoke, that's the only thing that
Mhm.
makes sense, actually. They're afraid of La Tarasque.
No,
And his
maybe
breath of
he
poison
had smoke bombs at one point,
That could be also. I mean, we didn't see
or
it,
knew how to
but
make them,
both.
because they're
both
like
things could be
you can't
true.
make them.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he'd hoarded a ton of stuff. So, like, God only knows. So, even if he had, like, made smoke bombs just to, like, provide cover, they could have been like, oh, he's a weird
Lunatic.
creature.
Well, okay, so that like is like real life becomes fiction, that sort of thing. But never mind the fact that one of the kids was wearing a pandemic mask. One of the long nosed ish, where they put the potpourri at the end,
Like the
to
plague
not
doc-
smell the
plague
dead
doctor.
Plague
bodies.
doctor mask,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm. Silas got one of those for his birthday this year.
Of course he did. He's your kid. I should mention that, okay, in the same breath as we talk about La Tarasque, we should mention that in the Bête de Gévaudan, the hide and seek, is the scene that happens beforehand, which is, first of all, he's easily caught, and they tell him, my daddy was the Count of Monte Cristo, essentially. He's humiliated. And then finding out the mule, he's humiliated again that they lied to him. And this is why he fucks off, and how he finds the mule is it's like further humiliation. And then he confronts Sylvie and Isabelle about the lies and refuses to go in the cart. He walks alongside, or in front of it, or alongside it.
What a kid reaction, too. I love that.
Well, it's
I'm
what a
still
relief.
coming because you told me I had to, but I'm
Right.
walking.
A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. At least there's that. And he's coming to grips with all this stuff too. So it was a very interesting look into a character who at first you find he's precocious, he's inquisitive, he's probing Daryl for answers. And then you find out he is just a kid.
Mhm.
And he is exactly what he wants to be, is just a kid. And he's having a fit. And so Tarasque was a legend from a town called Tarascon. It ravaged the town until Saint Marthe, which is Saint Martha. Charity, don't get a fit.
Ugh,
I know,
Martha.
I know. Is the one who tamed it. Let me skip
Wait
to
a
the
minute,
part
I'm the one
where
that I defend Martha.
you did eventually. Yes.
I can't stand Martha.
So the way she tamed the beast, the Tarasque, was she sprinkled holy water on a cross, which tamed the beast, and she tied her girdle around its neck. She was a nun, or a holy woman, and led it into town, where subsequently the townspeople threw rocks and spears until it died. Well, the walkers took care of that with RJ Gaines, but same principle. But going back to one little factoid that I found, this legend is closely tied to a fictional story about a fictional mock hero called this is why I love the French. They do contribute to some really cool fiction. The character's name is called Tartarin de Tarascon. It was about a middle-aged man who was a boastful braggart, easily deceived, as Daryl has been thus far, by Maribel and Guillaume, and probably the people on the boat too, but good-hearted. It was written by Alphonse Daudet in 1872. And the interesting thing about this story, it's a little tiny factoid, is that this story does contain some anti-Semitism in it, as well as some whole chunks that were taken out in modern times by future.
Isn't there some weird like eroticism thing in it? I read about that. I was like,
but they kept that shit in. They took out all the stuff that was slamming Islam too, because it didn't even interfere with the plot whatsoever. They were able to take it out safely. It's like, but some of the anti-Semitism was just, shifted around a little bit just to kind of be a little bit more palatable. But who, if not Daryl, is this kind of guy? He kind of walks around confidently, but is easily deceived because he actually does have a good heart. It's a middle-aged man.
Especially when it comes to kids, right?
True. I wish I read more up on that, because there is like an encounter with the Tarrasque or something like that. And we see Daryl as like the hero. He is the protagonist. There's no other way to see him, but it's interesting to see him in a different light as you go, oh, he is a middle-aged man who can get tricked by people easily.
He's like the comedic relief in his own show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Can we hit on that a little bit? Because some of the critics have panned this series thus far because of that, because he's the butt of some jokes and they're making fun of his mannerisms.
Now, a lot of that
like
has to do with the fact that it's a fish out of water story, and fish out of water stories always result in the trope of the main character being funny because he's not doing things normally.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like Mork and Mindy.
Again,
in a sense.
There's a lot of criticism for the show based on tropes that have existed for years. So they decided to use them, and suddenly it's like, oh, no, this isn't wholly original. Okay, well, nothing is. Like, calm down.
Nothing is original, yeah.
Calm down.
Except Mork and Mindy turned it the other way. He turned the light on how ridiculous we are.
Yes, that's a great way of looking at it.
But, there were people that watched it, and they're like, he says nanu, nanu. That's funny. That's like, that was part of it. That's part of it. And
so weird.
He's a weirdo.
It's the catchphrase curse, just like Fonzie and Dynamite and Bazinga. Like, you can have the cleverest, funniest script, and people are going to gravitate to the most ridiculous catchphrase they can find.
And reduce you to it, too. Yeah. Or reduce your work to a catchphrase.
People that remember good times, who remembers what it's really about? All they remember is dynamite.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And not about what the heavy undertones. About. Yeah.
I think the show is extremely well done. And honestly, I think it has been fairly better than Dead City for a variety of different reasons.
Oh, interesting. Now we're comparing it.
Well, no, I said it's like it's comparing apples and oranges, but just as a whole, I do like it a lot more. But it has received some of the weirdest criticism, in my opinion. Like
from title sequence
the tropes, the title sequence, the fact that Daryl is talking too much. He's not even talking that much.
I've never heard that.
Some people were like, well, this is really out of character for Daryl, that he's interacting so much with other people. And it's like, not really. He was in a giant ensemble cast of like 15
Do they
plus
not remember
people.
season 1 and 2 of Walking Dead?
Right.
Yeah.
And he's always kind of been the butt of the joke because people have always underestimated him. And I think that still runs true in this, because for these people, he is just an American. And that carries a lot of connotations in its own right. And I'm not saying that some of them aren't true, because some of them are. And there are Americans out there who are bullheaded and think that we're the best and yada, yada, yada. Do I think that we come from a great country? Yes, I do. I'm not saying that we don't. Come from a great country that offers freedoms, and that's why people want to come here. I think it's easy to chalk it up to be like, oh, this is stupid and blah. But like, this is people underestimating Daryl like yet again.
Yeah, and so RJ Gaines isn't just a weird reflection of somebody continuing to try to come home. Like, oh, this is what I could be if I keep at it. He's also a foil for Daryl too. We're not all like
He's like
that.
a caricature of what other countries can view Americans as. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's someone who's like that guy out there somewhere. This guy is straight up cuckoo bananas.
Yeah.
For being alone. He needed a Wilson. Like, this guy clearly had no Wilson. Just heads up, anybody, if you're ever alone, like, get yourself a Wilson. I know that sounds nuts, but like, that's what keeps you sane, is talking to something. Because he keeps saying, oh la la, which just...
Oh la la.
Which, like,
oh, la, la.
It's so gross to me on so many levels, because it's not right. You're not saying the right phrase, sir.
That's what makes it perfect, though, to me, by the way.
The question is, why is he there? Why is he
I was wondering that. So he says that his family...
Why is Daryl in France?
He's been there, but this guy's been there since the beginning, apparently. And he keeps saying, I have a wife and kids to go home to. Well, why haven't you tried to go home? You you took all the supplies and you locked yourself in a castle. And yet you're saying that you've been trying to go, trying to go home. You have a wife and kids to go home to.
Part of me wondered if his mental break had to do with the fact that was his family on vacation? Did they die? And he is left being like that never happened. No, they're in the US and I just have to get back. And if I get back, everything's okay. But I'm not going to try because I know what actually happened to them.
I wondered if maybe he was one of the scientists that's involved and he had a heads up that shit was going to happen. And so he stocked up on the supplies and put himself in the castle before the shit broke loose because he couldn't get back home. And now he's got some kind of guilt shit going on because he's part of the problem if he created it. And so he's had this hope this whole time that maybe it didn't spread to America. And now here's this American showing up and telling him that it did. So America's gone too.
Which is exactly the opposite of what we thought in the last episode. Meaning I had said that France got it later, hence the 12 years since the fall sort of situation.
I actually thought maybe he was lying about the family at all.
Yeah.
I didn't even really believe that he had a wife and 4 children.
Yep, me
That's
too.
possible.
It was a sympathy story to try and save his own life.
True. I thought something else. What if he is the cause for the outbreak? What if he had found out that France hadn't fallen somehow? And maybe he was a scientist, maybe he wasn't, but he went there just to check it out. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. And then when it actually does happen, now he wants to go back to his kids, but he can't. And so he's living within his guilt.
So you're thinking he did see what happened in America and then fled for France? Because to me...
without his wife and kids, let's say.
To me, he did seem genuinely shocked by Daryl's comment. So I do believe that he wasn't aware of what was happening in America. That shock did seem genuine. But
I was just led to believe that
I just
that was
wasn't
like
buying the family
mental
story.
break.
Well, yeah, and you could even go as far as to say he left his wife and kids when they were very young, the kids at least, when they were very young. And now he's thinking about them now that the apocalypse has happened. A lot of people think about the things that they could have done right before things happened. And maybe this is one of those things.
If it was about the whole, this is like The Last of Us because Laurent is immune, blah, blah, blah. Scientifically, many diseases do not pass through the placenta when a woman is pregnant. And if it does, the baby is basically going to share the same fate as the mom. And then where, in my opinion, where immunity would come in at is when you're breastfeeding, you have antibodies for whatever disease you have in your body that you're giving to the baby so the baby doesn't get sick with you. That's the only time, to me, immunity would kick in. And she clearly didn't have enough time to breastfeed anybody.
Nope. She died mid-childbirth.
Yeah.
But there are many different types of diseases and also radiation. We learned this when we were covering Fear the Walking Dead in both seasons 5 and I think 7, where the only radiation that the placenta can't, or whatever, the umbilical cord, whatever the whole, I don't know, women systems. I'm not a doctor, but the only thing that it can't filter out is ionic radiation. And in that respect, it filters out the ionic radiation from the mother and it goes straight into the child, which is why Athena passed or was destined to not survive. It went in reverse. Usually the mother gets afflicted, the baby's protected in those cases where that happens. But before Rachel goes, because I know you do have to leave, what we didn't do in the beginning, and something that I wanted to do, but for some reason it slipped our mind, is I was trying to focus on initial reactions. Tell everybody about the face of horror competition, because you never pump yourself up before you should. And, sometimes I do it, and sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't.
So at the urging of our good friend, Brian Castrillo, he participated in this contest last year, and then he reached out to me and said, you should really do it. He's always been very supportive of my makeups and always commenting and complimenting, which I appreciate. Love you, Brian. So
we should state he's supportive of everyone on this podcast for a variety of reasons. He is such a good friend.
His recaps.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. So at his urging, I did enter this contest. It's like a series of voting things where the competitors get whittled down round by round by accumulating the most votes. You can vote for me, and then hopefully I get on to the next round. I'm trying to win $13,000. Boom. And
which you can definitely use.
I could definitely use that.
I'll say that she won't.
Yeah, I definitely could. I'm about to drop $5,000 tomorrow on a new transmission.
Oh, God.
Ford.
But also, I could win a photo shoot with Kane Hodder. If you don't know who that is, he played Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th series. He was in Friday the 13th 7, 8, 9, and 10. And I got that information from my son, who is a
Wow.
huge Jason fan. In fact, Kane Hodder is his favorite Jason. So I'm really, really, really trying to win this.
Maybe he should be in the
for
competition.
Silas. So I know, right. And I'm like, if I do win, I really hope I can like somehow bring Silas with me, because I think he would just absolutely pee his pants to be able to meet his favorite Jason.
That's got to happen. So if you want to make this happen for Rachel, you have to go out and vote for her daily.
Yeah, I have like several links on my Facebook page and in my Instagram bio. And you can vote every day.
Yeah, you
too.
can vote every day.
1 or 2 votes every day.
And I'll say this much, if you have a credit card, it counts as 2 votes. If you use that as your authentication method, it'll give Rachel 2 votes per day, which is what I've been doing. Because,
Oh.
bitch,
And
I'm going to get you to win.
And they are raising money for the B Plus Foundation. I'm going to embarrass myself right now and tell you I haven't looked a whole lot into it, with all my free time I have
be
going
positive, maybe?
on. Maybe.
It might be.
B plus, be positive. So if you feel so inclined to donate to this foundation, that also counts as extra votes for me too.
Well, that's good for me. I hope it's good for you too. And Rachel did get past the first round of voting, so congratulations.
Yes.
And hopefully
I
you'll
did.
get past many more. So
It's
for better
a
work.
Foundation Against Childhood Cancer.
Boom.
Thank you.
It's like our thing for St. Jude's all the time, every day.
Yes, which is very, very close to my heart.
I am going to take my leave as well, y'all. I gotta go. I'm tired and I got shit to do. So
Okay. Bye.
Love you guys.
have fun.
Bye.
Thank you for making it.
See you later.
It's tough.
Whistling is never a good sign in the show.
Oh my
Do you
God.
know what they
that
were whistling?
that
though?
whistle. Yeah.
Oh, really?
I didn't know what it was. What was it?
I didn't know.
They
either.
were whistling Alouette,
Oh.
which I thought it was
Oh.
because this is the same song that Isabel was saying to Lily as they were trying to push out Laurent to, again, a promise or an affirmation that she was trying to say, you're going to get through this. You're going to have this baby. You're going to be okay. She's not going to be okay. This is another promise that was broken. The only promise that was kept in all the promises that were made on this show, this is just the one nugget that's worth mentioning that I don't have any others left of, is the only promise that was kept in this episode was the raising of Laurent. That's it. Going on the heels of what I said earlier, what we view sometimes as the apocalypse is the relinquishing of responsibilities. But my assumption that Isabel was the one to raise Lily after her parents must have passed doing Doctors Without Borders. It went the exact opposite way. In a weird twist of irony, she was now meant to take care of another kid from scratch. If that is the case, that's a weird, special kind of irony or hell or test from God, however you want to put it. But that was the only promise that was kept. Even Mouf, the kid whose older brother, Julien, he screams out to Lou, "You lied to me!" And, they proceed to try to end his misery and stuff like that. But it's shattering the illusions of what's meant to quiet children down in order to get through a hard situation. But then it ends up being the one thing that makes things worse.
Daryl did not have to tell her the truth at the end, but I was really glad that he did, about the medicine wasn't going to save her to begin with.
Yeah.
And he just lied because he needed that horse.
Interestingly enough, I think this was after the encounter with RJ Gaines, seeing that version of himself that could have probably, maybe not. We don't know what the hell his situation is, but it's a sign from God. Everything is meant to be where they're supposed to be. Everything happens for a reason, Bridget.
It does.
It's funny that I wrote this before you ever said anything, Bridget, about the other zombie having a baby in the movie. Because I wrote that this one hit me different than any other version that I've seen before. I don't know if it's the emotion behind it. I don't know if it's because it's The Walking Dead, or I don't know if it's just because in this world, zombies didn't exist. And so I feel like we start from scratch as far as, I never compared it to anything else zombie-like, if that makes sense. And so seeing like a walker have a baby just kind of hit me a bit different than anything I saw before.
It sounds to me like you're way more invested too.
Yeah.
You're already backloadedly invested in this universe to the point where sometimes it's hard to turn off the fact in your brain that it's not real. It's
Right.
fictional. Even though I was getting emotional about all these children who are left behind, they're not, this isn't
Right.
fiction.
When they returned back, for some reason, it put me in the mind of two different times. One when they returned from Meridian, and then one when Daryl, Connie, and Henry returned to or showed up at the kingdom.
That everything was going to be all right. That moment where everything was okay
Right.
until eventually it wasn't. Oh, I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
Because eventually it wasn't. I did want to drop one more thing, though. When they are at the funeral, let's say, of Madame Dubois, Laurent is the first one to cite Nanu Nanu. On the first watch, I didn't catch it. And on the second watch, I'm like, what a fucking clever kid. They took that thing that they normally probably take for granted, recite it like a prayer, watching it over and over again, not thinking anything of it. But Laurent, having seen this for the first time, said, oh, you know what? This is something special to them. And maybe even Madame Dubois. And maybe they learned something from this show. So I'm going to Nanu Nanu. It's very clever. Heartstrings. We should say one tiny thing about Alouette. Alouette is a weird song about French traders in North America, Canada, US, etc. Here are the lyrics to the song translated in English. Lark, nice lark. Lark, I'll pluck you. Lark, nice lark. Lark, I'll pluck you. And the last line is, I'll pluck your head.
Sure.
Do you want to know the origin of that is? The lark is the first bird in the morning that sings, at least when they were in the US. It's basically their alarm clock. So it was the first thing they want to kill in the morning. It's like, fucking thing. I'm French. I don't want to wake up early for fur trappers and stuff. Oh, I'm going to eat this bird out of spite.
What's even
It's terrible.
More unusual about this is a song that's not in America to children. Because
very
I
interesting.
know this song. So like,
Yeah.
you know, when it started playing, it's like, Alouette, jante Alouette,
Alouette. I was singing with it.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's like Frere Jacques. They're the two songs in French that I have learned as a child, which is just like weird.
There's a huge reason for that, though. During World War II, when the French and the US were pairing up, a lot of the GIs came home learning Frère Jacques, particularly, and Alouette. So that's why people like even me know. We have some relatives that grew up in Lebanon, too, and Lebanon was taken over by Napoleon and the French colonization of those countries. There's a lot of French influence in those countries. So we learned all those songs as well.
This is interesting because I must have been taught them in school because I don't know that I would have been taught them. Otherwise, I mean, my dad's from England, so maybe he would have known them.
I want to go as far as preschool.
Well, yeah, nursery rhymes and songs are a pivotal teaching piece. And clearly that's why they stick with us, is why you remember things like Alouette and Frère Jacques. Although I do not remember the words to Frère Jacques, I just remember
Dormez-vous, sonnez la matine, ring the bells, ding dong dang. That's it. That's the song. My brother Jack, are you still sleeping? Ring the bells. It's a song about waking up.
Yeah.
Fucking the lark, the horned lark.
Interesting.
Is waking me up. The French do not like being woken up.
Me neither, dude. Me neither.
That's how we bond. Or maybe that's how it was. That's like, oh right,
yeah. We hate getting up early.
Yeah, we have also a revolution too. Damn the English. Fuck those guys.
Thinking over the first episode again, I'm starting to think. Now this is just like a wild-haired theory, so don't think that this is my thought on this. It came into my brain the other day, and I was like, that's interesting. I'm starting to wonder if not Kublek, if her people. So what's the purpose of the boat? Like that's what I was trying to think of. Like why?
You're talking about Genet's purpose with the boat?
Yes, not Kublek. That's her name. And I thought, well, what if this does have something to do with the scientists who made this worse?
In the stinger to the Walking Dead World
What
Beyond?
if this has something to do with them? Like, what if the walkers in the US are more basic strain, and so that's why they're trying to pull them over to be able to like gather, like cultivate that data from before? Because if there's some sort of mutation or variation, then maybe. And then I was thinking, have they then brought that variation over to the US? And is that why the variants technically they showed up at the beginning, but that was really just Frank Darabont? But is that why they didn't show up until the end? Because this just happened in the last couple of years, because they've just had the boat for 3 years. I don't know.
Or maybe we're wonky too. By the way, maybe the variants are our attempt to slow or curtail or end the walker apocalypse.
I don't know. My whole thing is like, where are the fast, strong walkers? Because I want more of that, because that was horrifying.
Oh, well, guess what? You might get that in the next episode.
Thank God. Finally.
Boom.
If this is connected to CRM and it's after the events of World Beyond. I'm thinking that they're tired of getting their labs destroyed, and they decided if they can get what they need and run out onto the water where basically nobody is, then they can do what they need to do uninterrupted.
And then still the lab
Right.
was destroyed, so they're idiots.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, how about this? No, you're onto something, because if we're going to take what happens in the Stinger to the Walking Dead World Beyond seriously, and maybe the French scientists are, they're learning the lesson from that. Instead of something even going more horribly wrong in town, they can do it on a boat. So if anything goes wrong, everybody signed a waiver or whatever.
Oh, interesting.
And that experiment ends at sea, let's say. Smart, actually, if you think about it. Of all the things of mice and men often go right, man plans and God laughs sort of situations, that could still go wrong too. And enter Daryl Dixon. So there we go. Something did go wrong. Not horribly wrong, and they made it there safely, but still. So, which is, again, another reason to not tear down Janae just yet. And whatever group she's part of now. Interestingly enough, I'm glad you brought it up, because I have had time to think about this, because it wasn't in the last episode, but when I was doing the blog yesterday, I didn't notice the symbol in the top right of the left page was for Pouvoir des Vivants. It was the logo that goes along with Pouvoir des Vivants. So in the anatomy book, in the title sequence with all the red ink and the Latin medical terminology, etc., the logo is in the top right page, which got me to thinking we had attributed to Caudron as the leader of this group. But what if we were doing that just because he happened to be in the same area as this logo, and we said, oh, that's him, he's the leader of that group. Isabelle refers to him as the guerrier, which is like a gorilla. You know, he's just a local guy that's doing his thing, like Negan and the Saviors. What if Pouvoir des Vivants is Janae's group? Just like the CRM logo would be?
That's, yeah.
And because of the medical books, they're actively studying how these things, how the virus spreads faster if you recharge the heart. Case in point, you had said that Lily, it would take her maybe a day or something to change. But what if she was in labor? Her blood pressure's rising, and of course the heart's beating faster, so she turns quicker. So there's
that and I assumed that she just died mid childbirth due to whatever complication was happening. I would have thought, based on her symptoms prior to that it was ectopic, but she was way too far along for that to be true. So
right. It was in her lower abdomen too. Like some babies are higher, some babies are lower.
Hers was dropped. Yeah.
So I was really trying to figure out what was going on there, because the puking and stuff, that's usually a sign that there's some sort of like infection happening.
That's what made me think of the gravidarum, the thing I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, but it would have been really consistent. Like that would have been like, there's no way she would have been able to hide that from Isabelle.
Right.
Because she would have been throwing up nonstop.
Okay, so that actually adds more logs to the fire of Isabelle putting her life on hold, going into this life because her sister is sick and her parents are gone too. And maybe that's why she would be mad at her sister. Because I didn't tell her about this baby for 7 months, and she's had to go out and work to maintain the apartment and stuff.
No, I didn't think that was it at all. I felt like there was no sign.
I'm not tied to this.
There was no sign that she had done a really great job of hiding it.
No, which means she might have thought she was sick the whole time.
No, I don't think so. Not like that. Okay. Because I'm telling you, I've worked with people who've had this, and it is like, good luck trying to hide that you're pregnant, because everybody's going to know right away.
Yeah.
Because I can hear you throwing up every time you go to the bathroom.
I was promoted and didn't realize I was pregnant. It was after miscarriage number 5, and we were done trying to have babies, and I was like really into my job, which is why I accepted the promotion, and we didn't realize I was pregnant already. And I tried to hide it from my boss, except I spent 6 of my 8-hour shift in the bathroom.
Oh my goodness.
He knew immediately that I was pregnant.
Really bad. Some women like can't work at all through it.
Oh yeah,
some women have
to
go off
work.
Yeah. I've worked with a woman who worked through it, but she was on a lot of medications like Zofran and stuff to be able to try to keep food down.
Going back to the textbook though, Caudron might not be with this Pouvoir des Vivants group.
Oh, I don't think he's anywhere near as important as I
mean, he was just she refers to him as a gorilla, and I remember thinking like, interesting. So they're just like a group in the area, local guys. But I did think like, okay, they're gorilla. So then is there someone to be fighting against? That was also my other thought.
Exactly. And maybe that's that they're the group that they're fighting against. So we should bring up that he does appear in this episode. He does see the map. He does get Daryl Dixon's recording. What's interesting that's on the map, though, is at some of the key points like Carbon and Jupiter, they have little numbers underneath it. And these are representative, I think, of radio frequencies.
That's what I figured.
Isabel mentions this in the first and second episode, that there are certain locations with people with radios. Obviously, Daryl wants to get to one of those radios so that he can call home and eventually head
Well, what
there,
I thought
but
was interesting is she changed the plan last minute, and now they're not going to Paris, so they're not even going to follow that
messages from
route.
God.
So, well, it reminds me of when the wise men came to visit. So this is New Testament, Dave. So sorry, this is
No,
New Testament.
I'm all ears. I don't really know stuff like that.
After Jesus was born, the night that he was born, there were the wise men, and you don't know how many there are. It's often depicted as 3 of varying ethnicities, but you don't know where they're from or anything like that. Just that they were from far away.
Which is why they probably picked 3, because you could pick 3 different cultures or ethnicities.
Based on the star that was bright in the sky on the night of Jesus's birth. It fell in line with prophecies in scripture. And so they were like, this is it. We've got to go. Now, the false depiction often is that they showed up on the night of Jesus's birth. Not true. The only men to show up on the night of Jesus's birth were the shepherds that were in the fields nearby. So the wise men show up. It's assumed that Jesus is probably 2 around this time by the time they finally get there. So they've been traveling for 2 years because they left at the time that they saw the star and they followed it. So this is the other thing that's interesting is, did God guide them on this journey, or was the star still there? Did the star move along with them to show like where Jesus was? But anyway, they follow the star. On the way there, they stop by King Herod, and King Herod is like very interested in what they're doing, because they're saying like, we're going to see the one who's been prophesied. We're going to see the Messiah. And he's like, interesting. I don't like that because I'm king and I want ultimate power, and I don't want to rival any other kings here.
Ties with Saint Laurent too.
So
Saint Lawrence.
Yeah, that's true.
We should just call Laurent Larry.
So when they get there, they tell the family about King Herod, and then I think Joseph has a dream to go to Egypt to get out because Herod is coming for them. And so they do leave and they go to Egypt, and they're there for many years to avoid King Herod's wrath. And so I just thought that was really interesting because it's that last minute divine intervention to say like, nope, not that. You're not going to keep doing what you're doing. Go this different route. And that is what they end up following. And then as a result, Jesus lives, because otherwise he would have been murdered as a child.
It's a lot like the 40-year journey in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
What most people don't know why the Jews spent 40 years in the desert, and it was actually to remove a generation who had took part in the sin of the golden calf.
Well, yeah, it was punishment. They would not have wandered for that long had they listened.
Every one of
but
them.
Because they went and because it didn't.
It's a very short journey.
Aaron, like Aaron was the one who gave them the gold. He like melted it down for them to make the calf.
And what's interesting about that is the idea of mob mentality. Mm-hmm. And we get from that the virtue of pikuach nefesh, which means do what you need to do to save your skin, because your life is precious and sometimes you will have to do things. This is like a stark difference from the contrast of like some people who view it as martyrdom. Oh no, I'm not. I'm going to die on this hill, a martyr. And so we value the premise of actual, and that's interesting because they wander through for that specific amount of time to get to that specific leader and to get here at the perfect moment where he's 2 and can travel, not like a baby, and make it through the desert to reach Egypt too, which it's not a long trip, but it's long enough.
At that point, Joshua becomes leader because Moses was told, you will never see
you need to wait
the other side of this.
I'm sure there's things that we obviously missed, but if you like what you heard, head over to ratethispodcast.com/squawkingdead. Leave us 5 stars on an eggplant.
Leave us 5 stars and a pamplemousse.
Sure. Oh no, actually it's leave us 5 stars in an aubergine.
Yeah, and pamplemousse is grapefruit. It was just the only fruit or vegetable I knew.
It's the grapefruit. Yeah, pamplemousse or there's no grapefruit emoji. Oh, you're weird, Bridget. Anyway, aubergine. An aubergine, it's enough to tell us that you love us, but tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Tell us what you think we might have missed. But remember to tell us, it's very important that you do, every single time after every single episode. And if you really like what we've done here today for you, well, think about maybe following us on either Ko-fi or Patreon, because that's the best way and the only way to get our recording schedules as well as knowledge on when we drop our unedited episode recordings. And if you really like what we're doing and you want to support our journey, you could tip us for 30 days of access to those unedited episode recordings, as well as consider, maybe it's a good thing, it's actually kind of cheaper than tipping us. join a membership tier for as little as $1 a month on either ko-fi.com/squawkingdead or patreon.com/squawkingdead. You'll get instant access to our Discord, and depending on the tier that you join, you may end up getting perks at the end of every episode. And if you're in the Survivors tier, you could come on to these podcasts like Takira has, but we don't have any slots left, so maybe keep checking. And join these episode breakdowns with us. Well, I've been your host, David Cameo, and I was joined by Cosmom09 Rachel Burt, Sharon D, aka Blazy Gardner, and Bridget, ko-fi.com/Punky Brewster, that's PUNKY as well as Survivors tier member who we just said, or just, yeah, it's a Survivors tier. It's the best one. Secure is the best. You can reach her at ko-fi.com/Connie Dixon for life. That's Connie Dixon, the number 4 LYFE. I hope you enjoyed this episode breakdown. I can't wait for you to join us for the next one. And hopefully by then we'll have some cool stuff for you to take a look at in our merch store. And we will sing Alouette on the way out. Everybody, no, don't do it. I urge you not to, because then I have to sync it, and it's very bothersome. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Aubergine.
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 I know the color is aubergine though in America.